You can go right ahead. All right, our first thing is the chamber. Troy, how was your trip?
Well, good evening, everybody. The trip was fantastic. I'm fresh off it. This is my first day back in the office since returning, so I'm still a bit jet lagged and feel like I'm watching everything happening, but not actually a participant in it. So let's hope I don't embarrass myself this evening.
Some of us are that way all the time, by the way.
In other good news, it's hard to tell, but at this moment, because I've been talking all day, but my voice is coming back, which means my nerve is healing. So I probably won't have to have surgery. Yes, thank you. I'm so thrilled because nobody wants needles stuck down their throat. So not a good thing. So yeah, I caught myself singing a song to my dog earlier today and realized that I could sing again. So I had kind of an epiphanal moment. So good news there. I do want to share some photographs because of course, being back from Bavaria in that trip, I'm now an expert on everything Germany, right? Of course. And but we did have some great inspiration, things that we saw. Of course, we also there were some of our board members that coincided their trips. Two of them being also on the Downtown Steering Committee, which is Kevin and Oliver. And we got a lot of inspiration for downtown. And we have all kinds of pictures of cobblestones and seating arrangements and the type of chairs they use. And just kind of took an extra eye at that, looked how their no curbs work and how they have gutter systems and things like that. Also was really intrigued in Bod's Holes, how they have dynamic parking signage and it's controlled by an arm that goes up. So when a car comes in, it knows to reduce the number on this sign by 1. And when a car leaves, it adds it back. We watched that actually happen in real time and was amazing because there are parking garages across the river on one side of the river. So it was really helpful in directing us right where we needed to go. So we knew we could get out and then walk around. So that was a great thing to see. And this is just a smattering of some of the stuff that we came up with. And we're going to kind of put this together in an inspiration board that can maybe help the Downtown Steering Committee and others going forward when we're talking about redoing things. And then I'll pivot, pivot over to pedestrian counts for May. We ended the month of May 3% up from the previous year, which is great because since February, March, and April, each of those months were down between 6 and 8% overall with the pedestrian counts. January was bonkers great. It actually made the first quarter end up positive because it was so great. But then we started seeing it starting to struggle. Glad to see the numbers bounce back. This big spike at 79,000, that was Mayfest weekend. So we went from 58,000 in 2022 to 79,000 in 2023. We had much better weather, but we had a lot more activities planned too. And then the weekends after that, you can see there was an increase for the Rotaries events. That weekend did really well. And then finally, the holiday weekend with the Alport celebration peaked a bit more, especially on the Saturday. So some good news coming out of May. And then the other thing we've got that's hot right now is next week on the 21st in the evening, we have our Rec Ambassador training. And this is the schedule for the year. So every weekend, starting July 1st, we have 2 nonprofit organizations for each weekend, which means we'll definitely have coverage every weekend at the key locations that we need Rec Ambassadors to be. So that again is next Wednesday, and then July 1st will be our first Rec Ambassadors out in the field. And that is all I've got for my first day back.
Great.
Any questions or thoughts or comments? I'd be happy to field.
Good to have your voice back.
No.
Yeah, it kind of, as you can see, it kind of comes and goes. Yeah. And it kind of the other day I was hitting these spots where I felt like my voice was going through puberty, and I think it's actually just the healing process. So there are still some red-faced, embarrassing moments when the wrong note comes out, but definitely feel a range coming back into it. So I got my voice back from the sea witch. So that's how I feel.
Right. I was gonna ask you, Troy, what was like 2 or 3 of your biggest takeaways from that trip, Germany?
Oh, wow. Let's see. One of the best experiences we had was meeting with the owner of Hotel Veronica, which is a pension in Meerhofen, Austria. And he took us to a ski hut up in way up in the hills in one of the valleys where they operate a little restaurant. And we got to meet the owner and his wife, and we were the only people there. And he kind of took us there to host. And we are working on the two of them to be entertainment here in Leavenworth. And after dinner, they got out their accordion and their button box, and we were treated to a 45-minute concert. He serenaded his wife. There were tears. There was dancing. It was one of those moments that feels surreal because it just feels like you're in a movie. So that was amazing. We also got to experience some of the things. We went and did some of the alpine coasters, so we can kind of compare it to our alpine coasters, see what that is. But there was just a lot of introduction. Like, I really get the architecture now, and that after having been to like 8 towns and seriously like really looking at the architecture. And Kevin Reiki, can I just tell you, if anybody needs a tour guide through Bavaria, Kevin Reiki is amazing, and all the things that he can point out. So he was fantastic in really pointing out architectural things that that the DRB is really striving for. So a lot of that, there was a crash course education in that as well. And then, I think that's my 3. But yeah, also just getting to spend time with the staff and some of the board members, and really getting to understand what we're trying to emulate better, because it's, I feel like we can now talk the talk and walk the walk when we talk about, striving to make the area more of a Bavarian themed a village, and how we can kind of continue to keep doing that, and things that we can incorporate, learn. Every single one of those little towns has an underground parking garage that pops you up right in the middle of the activity. And it's like, man, if these ancient old towns can do it, so can we. And so it gave a lot of inspiration for what we can accomplish, and things that are just very, seem on the horizon, or something that we need to talk about. It's nice to go see it being in practical use and how it's helped. The other big takeaway, because I did go to San Francisco over Memorial Day weekend for a friend's 50th birthday, and I saw how horrible the crowds are there. It was gut-wrenching to be there on this Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, and having lived there for 8 years, it felt like a Tuesday in March. And the everything closed up, shops closing down, things that are no longer there. And then to carry that over to Munich, where they're already having over tourism already. In Europe, the tourism is back. Munich was absolutely packed with people. You don't see the H&M and all the luxury retail, not H&M is not luxury retailer, but all the retailers that have closed in San Francisco had throngs of people in them in Munich. So it really shows that there is still more recovery being done here on the West Coast, because we do not have those international travelers back. And just being able to compare those 2 cities and seeing one that's like really struggling with closed down, and then seeing Munich where, and being in Europe where there was already, articles written about tourism was back, and where it's already becoming a problem again for them in some of their heaviest sites like Venice, and, those places where they've really been trying to regulate the numbers. So, quite a comparison when you look at the 2.
Troy, could you speak a little bit to the public transportation in terms of getting people around? The amount of people walking, taking bicycles, that kind of thing? What was your general impression of that?
Some place it kind of varied. Some places it was better. Where we really talked about it was in Meyerhofen. That valley has a train, but it's a bit cumbersome. So, they say that a lot of their visitors don't actually use it as often. And that's a really good study on tourism, and as that whole valley has seen an increased explosion, and pretty much all of the buildings have been turned into pensions. And so there's just so many hotels that their rates, they've had to really push their rates down. And because there's so much competition, too much competition. However, it hasn't really hurt their housing too much, because a lot of the larger properties build in their own housing for employees, because they're so used to bringing in Polish and Romanian workers for their seasons. So they have a really good amount of seasonal housing, so it hasn't hurt them, but it has created a lot more people in their valley and a lot more considerations that they have to make with regard to their tourism.
But people seem to be getting around okay, walking, public transit, buses, bicycling. Is that all pretty well integrated?
Yeah, and I did not see, as in Munich, you see tons of bikes everywhere. In some of the smaller towns, didn't see it as much. But we also were in one of the towns on a Sunday, and we were also on a Wednesday where it was Corpus Christi, where it completely shuts down. If you've been there on a Catholic holiday, everything is closed, even the big grocery stores. So some of the towns we didn't get to see completely in full swing.
Okay. Thanks.
How many of you went, Troy?
There was, let's see, myself, Jessica, Janet, and Ernest, and Kevin was our crew. But then we also, Martin Schuster, owner of the Hotel Pensionana, and his wife Erica and their daughter. We saw them several nights, and then towards the end of the trip, we also saw Max Kolonen, Andres Keller. He was there. And was able to join us for a few nights. And also Oliver Boulot and Don Wood were also traveling. They're actually still there, I think in Italy by now, but we were out to have a couple nights with them. And so it was really nice, because we kind of had people coming and going that were able to join our group and do some of the things that we were doing during it.
Great, thank you. So you're saying we got to go underground with our parking, no?
That's typically government subsidized. Subsidized that heavily.
All right. Thank you, Troy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good. Our next is about water rights and distribution.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So this time slot is available this evening to discuss the just the current state of our water rights and our distribution system. Primarily, this is going to be a discussion based on water rights. Before we talk about that, however, I do kind of want to share with the council some historic water source production data. So this is pretty interesting. So you notice in the late 80s, we produced more water annually than we do now. And this is primarily attributed to the fact that prior to this late 80s reduction in soil production, before that, there was no water meters. So basically, before this time, it was just used as much as you want. So the point being is, up until the first installation of water meters, generally speaking, the source production has been trending downward. And this far right is I did add the most recent series of data, so you can see this is through last year, so 2022. Some interesting notes here. So in terms of so a lot of this discussion is going to be based on ERUs, and an ERU is an equivalent residential unit. So when you do water system planning, basically calculate how much a single family household uses per day. So just to provide some context, in 1999, the gallon per day per ERU was 423 gallons per day. In 2016, which is the most recent data in our recent 2018 water system plan, the gallons per day was greatly reduced to 269 gallons per day. And if you recall, one of our water use efficiency goals is to get that down closer to 200 gallons per day. I should tell you about the next page, please. Yeah, there's another page. This is. Right. Just a PDF, so we just scroll. So Chantel's working on that, so. So this table here is again, the unit is ERUs, equivalent residential units. So as you can see from the far side of the table, this is supply facilities. So this is basically our source capacity and pure ability to source water. As you can see, we have enough source capacity to serve over 11,000 ERUs. In terms of treatments, we have the ability to treat just under 10,000 ERUs. Storage facilities, we're about 5,300 ERUs. Transmission distribution, this is the, I guess, most limiting factor on this graph, and that's just over 5,000 ERUs. And in terms of water rights, our uninterruptible water rights, we have currently enough to serve 6,000, just over 6,000 ERUs. Now, if you're wondering, hey, Tom, this is old data, so what is it today? So again, this data was based on the last water system plan update. With the exception of we did get additional water rights through the Wenatchee Reserve program in 2019. This does account for those additional water rights. So one thing I do want to note that according to Grant Osborne, who's working on our water system plan right now, what they're seeing is the general ERU gallon per day is really similar to what it was in 2016. So this graph is actually fairly applicable, with the exception, I will say, the 10-year and 20-year and ultimate build out need to be updated as part of the water system plan update. But in terms of current demands, this 3,100 ERUs, that's pretty accurate to today.
Okay, and that's based on the 269 gallon.
Correct.
That's the number you gave. Okay, I just want to make sure that's what we're
Yep.
thinking.
And according to Grant Osborne, I don't have the exact figure, but what they tell me is what they're calculating is pretty similar. So that we're gonna have really similar gallon per day per ERU. So generally speaking, we roughly have 2 times as many instantaneous water rights as we do current demand. And you can see here, this is our full water right portfolio, this QA. And that includes the uninterruptible water rights as well. And you'll see here that there's this green area. This includes the city's position. And just this orange graph up to the 7,100 ERU, that's Ecology's position. If everyone recalls, we are currently in litigation with Ecology over 800 acre feet of water rights.
So it looks like our demand is going to grow approximately 30% over the next 20 years.
So that I would caution that right now, the water system plan update we're going through, that's going to firm that up.
Okay.
So just focusing on this yellow current demand, that's fairly accurate as of right now.
And that's a study that's going on, you're saying?
Correct.
So in that study, are they going to predict, knowing that we're geographically limited to the amount of actual infrastructure development we have because we're geographically bound? Can they look at like a plateau of demand? Is that something they'll identify in 20, 30, 50 years, something like that?
So what they will do, so over here on the far right, there's this build out of the city planning area. So we'll call that the ultimate build out. So right now, they're going to take into consideration, recent zoning changes and all that. And so they're going to look at, like, hey, this is if we built the city out max density, this is what the ERU demand would be.
Perfect. That's a great number to have because it allows us to look at what our ultimate end game infrastructure demand is going to be. Then we can work on these limiting factors like you're saying. Because based on that, the transmission, we're looking at, maybe like 11,000 gallons. Yeah.
Oh, ERUs.
Yeah.
Yeah, ERUs. Yeah, to get up to our source capacity? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, yes, it's 5,000 ERUs times 260 minutes.
Oh, I see, that's a different.
Yeah, so that's 5,000 ERUs, right? And the ERUs are 269, so.
Yeah, that's gallons per day.
Per day.
Per day.
Okay, because I'm thinking more from fire, like if we had immediate wildfire need within the city for burning. I think we talked about maybe a 10,000 gallons a minute. So that's a hard number.
Yeah, we can't, you're talking like out of a fire hydrant?
Yeah, like let's say we had 4 fires going on in town. We had 4 engines that generally run 1,000 gallons a minute. I mean, we talked about being tapped out, and I'm just trying to extrapolate what would happen in a scenario of, you know, several homes on fire, like you see in wildfire ridden towns like Malden and Oregon. The terrorists, you know, what would be our maximum? I think we came to a number somewhere around 7,000 to 10,000. Like seven full-size structure engines operating simultaneously with tap outs. So that was just a guess.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's like,
Yeah, if you could shore that up a bit, because I think that'd be something good to know. If like, let's say we had mutual aid and had other fire departments come in to help us with a massive, you know, you need to know wildfires we can have. Multiple.
You know, it was interesting at that chump stick presentation that the fire forest service guy that deals with all these fires in the whole area and stuff. He said, forget about mutual aid stuff because those things are gonna go so fast. You're gonna be able to do what you can do locally before you either get it controlled or it's gone. And that's, you know, so you basically have 3 structures before you either get it or you lose it, because mutual aid is gonna take too long.
Well, I mean.
That's just
So
what he
Jackson's
said.
10 minutes away, and Lake Wenatchee is 20 minutes away, Cashmere is about 20 minutes away. So those are what I would call immediate mutual aid. Then I've worked with these departments when I was being senator here. And we did mutual aid for Sleepy Hollow, which I thought was quite effective because we limited the number of homes that burned to 28. So Wenatchee has a huge amount of resources. Yeah, I agree with you, Mayor, that these incipient fires, if you don't get them early, they go quick, but to prevent the domino effect of like 3 homes turning into 20 homes, having mutual aid is actually quite important.
The other thing that's gonna be interesting, Jill, to see is that we're gonna be undertaking this study to go to a more aggressive pricing level that encourages savings and doing that. And so, you know, getting that down from that, I mean, where it was 4 and now it's 260 and getting it down closer to that 200 also extends those.
yeah, that's a great point there. So if we pursue more conservation, we'll basically be able to stretch our water rights for. So we're getting that gallon per day down.
Hey, Tom, will that 100,000? Abilities number change with the walls being done.
That's a good question. Assuming that, you're talking about that source replacement study?
Yeah.
That's a good question. So if we were to deem that feasible, it would be the same today or that.
Yeah.
So it could increase depending on the productivity if we choose to go that route, it's feasible.
But we don't have 11,000 here.
We don't. We can't treat 11,000 areas and we certainly can't transmit or distribute 11,000.
Okay, so is the number 7191 in Houston, or is it that?
7191 is the amount of our water rights that we have available. That's the college's position. Water rights.
So we could take out more than wells.
Or the wells, yeah.
Now, okay, let me ask you another question. Does that include, or will that change if anybody abandoned well and annexes into this? Let's say as let's say the UGA. What is, how many areas is involved?
So you put something. No, Lo was just indicating that we do have that code that it's a requirement, but I don't have that calculation off the top of my head. And I don't want to put Mike on the spot. Mike.
Mike's already here.
Get pizza. Yeah.
You gotta earn your pizza, come on. No,
I don't know.
yeah, right.
I guess it would depend on what you were getting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need better pizza.
Yeah.
It could be different.
Yeah.
So Tom, my biggest takeaway is that right now, despite our dispute with ecology, we have plenty of water rights to serve our current and future customers. Our current demands are under 3,200 ERUs. And even with the limiting factor of our transmission and distribution lines, we still have plenty of supply to serve our future needs for growth.
Right, as this indicates, transmission distribution. And we are pursuing that with us. So the icicle transmission main is a big limiting factor for distribution. We currently have that project funded for design, and we will be pursuing construction funding simultaneously. And this is still, again, this is still being looked at in greater detail, because Rain Alcorn did do a flow test, and we do not meet peak hour demand. So that is attributed likely to the transmission main and the icicle. So
we do not need
the peak hour.
peak out.
But in terms of sizing and allowing connections, Department of Health bases that on max day demand and not peak hour demand. So it is, yes, it's not ideal to meet our peak hour demand, but it is not necessarily a limiting factor from a planning standpoint. Again, we are addressing it. So the bottom line is, like, with all of our sources combined, our pipes are just too small to be able to, because we have the ability, easy math, we have 5,000 gallons per minute capability with our sources combined, but we can only push 1,900 through our pipes. So there's opportunity there that we're not capturing.
And my understanding is, so we're looking at immediately doing from the well fields into town.
Correct.
And the reason we're not going all the way out yet is because we have to get this study done to see if we're gonna go to all well fields. There's no sense in enlarging the one that goes all the way out to the surface plant if we're not gonna use it. So that's kind of in limbo until we get this study done.
And this is all water, businesses, everything.
Correct. That's calculated. Yeah, good question.
And is there times when it's using more and you know that was visitors?
Well, our peak demand is tied to the hot summer days, and that is
Okay.
irrigation related. So during the hot summer months is when we see our max day. So it just depends on weather. So that's where we could, I mean, if we get to the point, we could impose some more strict irrigation watering requirements to kind of alleviate the max day. Again, it's mainly irrigation. It is irrigation that drives our max day.
So people are irrigating with treated water.
Yeah,
So we can't drill shallow wells and just use that for irrigation.
I think we've gone over that before.
I'm still questioning it because it
I
makes
know.
no sense. I mean, they do it all over the East Coast.
Yeah.
And you
Never
currently
gets
already
started.
have in code the language to put the restrictions on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of talking to college people.
Tom, do you have any ideas about our next priorities for water conservation? We did the smart meters. That was kind of to collect the baseline, find out where the leaks are or where the unpermitted hookups are. We have other steps.
Yeah, great. Good question. So the next step, as Mayor alluded to, is to pursue a conservation-based rate.
Got it.
So I'm working on the draft RFQ for a utility rate study to actually on that today. So the next step is to get a utility rate study going.
So financial stick.
Yeah, exactly. So have people pay for every gallon they use instead of buying a block of 7,500 gallons a month.
Yeah.
And you can even look at, because of the smart meters, you can look at pricing at different times of the day.
Yeah.
All kinds
Peak
of
time.
ways of stretching that.
A few years ago, we talked about other grants potentially through iSchool work group for hoteliers, like low flow showers, toilets, things like that. Has there been any more discussion about that? That was probably 4 years ago.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. So our water system plan does lay out that type of program, just allocating funding. We do have the conservation and drought planning that's funded through the iSchool strategy. That's going to be further partnership with Schlein County. we certainly can add that into it as well.
Seems like no matter what we do, conservation should be part of it.
And the biggest incentive for commercial is that their sewer bill is based
Yeah.
on consumption. So
Yeah.
if they limit their water consumption, their sewer bill goes down.
I guess a lot of them have aging infrastructure and might welcome that partnership if there's financial aid available, grant in the form of grants. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. We still have a couple minutes left. I'd be happy to. Yeah, you can start.
I was gonna ask you-
Package review.
The WSP demand was at 3,172. That's the orange,
That's current, that current demands, and again, that's fairly accurate to today, even because just the way the ERD calculation is looking.
that's the areas that are tapped into this point, as far as we know.
Any other questions?
If we could eliminate that peak demand with irrigation, where would that put us?
I'm sorry.
If we could eliminate that peak demand from irrigation in the summer, would that put us in a better position?
Oh, it certainly would. Yeah, I mean, that's again, that's the max day demand driver.
I'll speak to someone at the state level, see if we can fix that.
Well, it is kind of interesting when you go on the west side and you see all those brown lawns, and we over here on the east side, which is the dry side, keep our lawns all green. Just an interesting observation. The wet side dries up and the dry side wets up.
Didn't used to be that way, coming from the west side. That was green, moved here. I followed my bandit for 2 years. It was so dry, so, and then, things changed, and when their prices went up over there, people quit watering their lawns, period.
We want some with defensible space, just to play devil's advocate.
There went.
Yeah, right.
So is gravel.
Yeah.
The gravel is too, right?
The increased activity
It's probably hotter.
About weeds, about weeds. That's what I had.
All right, we're ready. I think that discussion's done. We're ready to move on to the recycling center yard waste discussion.
I'll intro this. So with us this evening is Ariana Jones with Waste Loop. Just to remind the council that Waste Loop is the operator of our recycling center by contract, and we support Waste Loop as much as we can in terms of obviously servicing the roll off dumpsters. Ariana, myself and other staff have been battling with the yard waste demands earlier this spring, and we're just trying to come up with a path forward, and there's an opportunity this evening for Ariana to address the council and provide her perspective on this. Ariana?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Hello, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I don't have a formal presentation, but really just wanted to open up the opportunity to discuss the challenges that are happening at the recycling center. And I know that many city council members have experienced them firsthand and been an advocate and ally for trying to figure out a better management plan. And so currently, the city accepts yard waste from residents that are within the city boundaries. And that was historically, to my understanding, driven by the fees that were collected from garbage when the city collected garbage from city residents. As we all know, the city no longer collects garbage from residents, and so there is a gap in funding for the recycling center overall for managing yard waste. And I think also a gap in understanding of, who is paying for the services and who can utilize the services. So a discussion around that is needed for a path forward.
Currently, your yard waste goes up to Winton, right?
Correct,
And
yes.
What do we pay, or what's the financial, what's the cost?
Yeah, we pay $45 a ton.
And how much is one of those trailers usually?
So it varies. They're 20-yard roll-offs, but the weight, it just depends on the
What's it
material.
in?
So just signed off on an invoice from I don't know how often we get billed, but it was a $600 invoice. I don't know if that was for the month or not.
Is that material compacted or chipped or in any way like reduced in volume? So they don't get.
Not on our end,
Okay,
just all of as it is.
so we could be hauling a lot of air.
Yeah.
But it's based on weight.
It's based on, it is, we pay based on weight.
I know we could, our costs are also the truck, the diesel, the driver.
Right, right.
And there will be some staff time involved in operational expenses if we were to chip it here. and haul it.
Sure. Interesting.
Do we haul it?
We do. We all.
Ari, do you have suggestions for us? You've probably given this more thought than we have.
Yeah, I think what I would really like to see is that the council to have a better understanding of the financials for the recycling center right now. I know that because funds have just been shifted to cover the cost up until this point, there's just a missed opportunity of being able to be more transparent and communicative with the community about operations. So a lot of people would love to see the recycling center open for more hours and more days, but that is a cost challenge. And so, you know, if the city wants to respond to those inquiries and suggestions, then I think really the council understanding what the cost is and where the funds are coming from, and just overall operations would be beneficial for clarity and transparency. So I think that's the first step is better understanding that. And then secondly, I think looking forward to other plans and partnerships now that Winton is available, utilizing them as well as partnering with the county, which is something that we started to discuss a couple of years ago. So really understanding what the requirements are for the city in terms of being in the quarantine area and meeting the needs of the community, but also understanding that you can't offer all of the services for free.
You have a number in mind? Which year do you? All right, did you have a number in mind, like what the fee would be?
A fee?
What, yeah, do you have a number in mind, what it would be? Have you guys discussed it, thought about it?
We have not discussed it. I am not privy to all of the finances for the recycling center at this point for yard waste. I know, you know, a lot goes into also the spring and fall pickup as well. So that was something, and there's a little bit of a black box for me where I'm not privy to all of the finances. So I think understanding those of how much is spent for yard waste is an important piece. And then, like I said, really understanding, you know, the requirements of the city. And I know there's been some confusion of what is required for the apple maggot quarantine area. And in my discussions with the Department of Agriculture several years ago, the main factor is that Leavenworth implements a program for segregation of organic materials from municipal solid waste. So it doesn't require any hauling or free service or anything like that. They just have to have a segregation program. So hauling and all of the other benefits are currently, because there's no fees collected, are currently a free service for city residents.
From an operations standpoint, one option could be if there's a desired level of service from the council, we can kind of work backwards from there.
Is there a limit to how much people can bring?
Until the 20-yard roll-off is filled.
Okay, so I could show up with like.
Okay, good question. We did implement a, I guess, unofficial limit towards the end because there were, we received reports of contractors dropping off large quantities of yard waste this spring. And then ultimately we just limited it to a single car load per truck.
Yeah, because I mean, it costs about $15 a truckload to bring it to Chelan County brush waste dump down in my super road. So if you're part of the, that's integrated with the apple maggot, and I think they burn that or they chip it.
They have burned it. We had permits for a while, but I don't think we did last year.
No, they have.
We only got a couple burned.
Yeah, we got a contractor that comes in with a big tub grinder.
Yeah.
Grind it all up.
Okay, I've seen, yeah.
It'd be helpful for, sorry, Clint, I know you have prepared remarks. It'd be helpful to have like a budget position for the recycling center, like a profit and loss, so we know what I have no idea how much we're spending
I
and
have
how
a
much.
very detailed spreadsheet that I've been tracking for about 10 years since we started recycling. That details every single recycling line item on the expense side and the very small revenue line item on the revenue side. The problem, and she noted this a little bit earlier, is that we don't have residential garbage. We do. We have the triplexes and above. We still handle all of their residential garbage, as well as apartment complexes and things like that. So we do it, but it's all embedded within your garbage fund. So there is some issue going on there that we should consider a fee, because we are subsidizing from commercial rates and accounts to pay for the free recycling that's happening for your residents. So we do need to address that at some
We
point.
pay Waste Loop to operate the recycling center.
Yep.
We pay to haul off the
That's in
trash.
my spreadsheet. That's
Yeah, I
in
mean,
my
it would be,
spreadsheet.
and we don't need 10 years because it's changed so much. I think the last couple of years would be fine.
Yeah, and as you look at my spreadsheet, it does fluctuate a lot because you have capital things that happened in some years. For instance, when we bought the
The shed.
shed
Yeah.
from Ariana,
Yeah.
and then there were other improvements to the recycle center when we first started it operationally. We bought the Stellar truck to help us haul stuff back and forth to Wenatchee. So there's definitely been a lot of different factors that have changed that over time. But keep in mind, we stopped residential in 2019, I think it was. So it's not like that's been a problem forever. It's just been an issue in my mind since we stopped taking direct residential garbage and then allowing the residents to take those. Just going back to the dump fees at Winton, I have a budget of about 15K, but I don't think we come close to that yet. It's probably more around the $10,000 a year range. But then we also pay the monthly fees for the other containers there to have those dumped as well. And that's several $1,000s a year. And then there's cardboard, and we do take cardboard down. So we get a revenue stream back from cardboard. But it definitely, I think for the most part, when I look at the spreadsheet, the expenditures typically exceed the revenues, not by a whole lot, but they are exceeding that. So yeah, I can share that spreadsheet with Ariana. She can take a look at that and maybe come up with some recommendations for fees.
But you're doing more than the dump. You're also tracking the time to take it out.
I do. I have a line in there that takes into account the amount of runs that they do, and it's all estimates.
Sure.
And each year, I add a cost of living adjustment to that particular piece. Fuel prices have nearly tripled from just the last 3 years. So fuel is excessive right now, but that can change depending on our federal government and how they change their policies.
So we're spending basically around 12,000 a year roughly
Easily,
to
just for yard waste.
for
Probably.
not including recycling.
Just yard waste is probably 12.
Yeah.
It's more for everything.
I think Ariana has a question.
Yeah, sorry, thanks. Chantel, I had a question. I've seen some of the values of the recycling center for the budget. Does that also ever include the spring and fall yard waste pickup operations?
In my spreadsheet that I track, there is the line item to Winton. That's the spring and fall cleanup. Is that what you're talking about? Or dump fees to them?
Yeah, and like the staff time required for that. I know it's
Yeah, that was the last thing I just mentioned. I have a line in there that is an estimate only. And it's based on number of trips we anticipate to happen and how many staff are involved with that.
great, thank you.
Are we the only city that's doing this? Because of the Apple Maggot thing, Cashmere, other folks don't provide that service.
What do you mean by doing this? Are you talking about spring and fall cleanup?
Providing
Brush.
free brush.
Spring and fall cleanup in particular?
No, just the brush disposal that goes year round.
I wouldn't say we're the only ones. Everywhere I've lived, I've had that on the West Coast. I don't know if
Okay.
that's like nationwide. that I've seen it and where
Okay.
I've been.
We are in a unique situation though of having so that we can't
Take
get,
it someplace.
for instance, Waste Management can't do it, take it down because they don't, I mean, they would offer it to us, but it would be, again, they'd have to have a separate truck that stayed up here and only went that direction and all of that stuff. So we are in a unique situation, even though, I mean, down in Wenatchee, you can do curbside, brush pickup as well, but again, it's a pay. I mean, you're gonna pay. We're one of the few. Well, and my understanding was the reason it was started, it's free, is to keep people from dumping it in the garbage,
Exactly.
right? Because
So we,
then it's going out of the Apple Mega quarantine. The whole point was to separate those out, that you don't have green.
We can't send.
You can't transport it outside of the Apple Mega quarantine area.
Prevent contamination or.
And so that's why they wanted us to separate it, and in order to get it separated, the incentive was, we're not gonna charge you for it. Because if we charged you for it, we were afraid it would all just get hidden in their garbage bags.
But it's okay to bring it to the icicle road.
Right, because they're same, it's not going out of the area.
Right. One quick question, Chantel, about your comment earlier about making money off of cardboard. We don't make money off of any other kind of recycling, like plastic or aluminum, steel, metal, nothing, just cardboard. And so we end up being revenue negative for all that other recycling materials. And Ariana, can you speak to that? Any kind of value for any of the recycling if we were to separate it, like plastic? I know we used to ship to China and then send it back to us, separated, and they make money off it.
That's dried up.
That stopped.
No, I know that dried up because they didn't want to do that anymore, but like, is there a way for us to separate our recycling and somehow use it as a revenue source if it's properly separated, and sold off as a commodity?
Unfortunately, not at this point with the way that the markets are. Yeah, as you all know, we collect glass separately, and that has a very, very small revenue that comes back. We pay about almost $500 a month, and we get per haul, and we get about $60 back on that. So even the ones that you do get a little revenue back from, it's minuscule, and it will not really cover costs.
If, let's say, we consolidated all of our recycling in the Upper Valley and Wenatchee and created like a big cooperative and shipped it back to Seattle where the value is, would that work, or there's no real?
Can you say that again?
So like if, for instance, I know that economics of volume play a role in your recycling materials. I know in Europe, that's how they do it. They consolidate recycled materials from large metropolis and they bring them to facilities that recycle. Like there's a lot of places that use, the clear plastic recycling #1, which is polyethylene terephthalate. The clear Coke bottle plastic. They use that in tons of materials that they do, partially recycle. So that actually has a value. At one point, I remember here in California, it was like 45 cents a kilo. So is there a way for us to consolidate all of our recycling, like the milk bottle plastic and the other plastics and the glass and steel and the aluminum, with the entire Upper Valley to create, because that's kind of like what you guys could do as a recycling organization, to then bring it to Seattle and then get your economics volume worked out.
You're muted.
Muted, Ari.
Thanks. Currently, with the markets the way that they are, there really isn't a revenue stream coming from the selling of recyclables that are sufficient enough to pay for operations. All of the major haulers that are hauling recycling really gets their funding from the hauling services themselves. And then that helps to cover the cost of getting it to the markets. But the markets themselves are not very large right now. So continuing to expand. There are some legislative bills that are continuing to be supported and moved through for bottle bills similar to Oregon. So things could potentially shift for at least aluminum and tin cans into the future in Washington, but not at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's why they've also dropped a lot of the different plastics and stuff too. They used to allow a lot more in than they do now, so.
Half the length,
Yeah.
they got in trouble, with all that stuff they took.
Oh, yeah.
All the site. And Canada was, they took it, they had nowhere to take it to, right, so they took it in. And they had computers, TVs, everything that said, we'll take everything. And then they took your minimum, so they ended up having this piles and piles, and it's hundreds of tons of.
Yeah.
Well,
They end up doing it.
So Ariana, are we sort of just stuck? We've got this free service we're losing money on. What, other than initiating a fee, what do you see the path forward for us?
I think really leaning into partnerships and who else is doing operations right now. You know, the city has so much on their plate, especially with public works, that I think partnering with the county and working with Winton on partnerships will really be one of the best solutions moving forward, recognizing that we're all in this same boat together, and that we can create more collaborative solutions in moving forward, that the city isn't isolated in this challenge, but we can work for a collaborative solution to it. But I do, recognize that it would be wonderful to come up with some strategies and implement something before the fall cleanup. For those folks and community members and council members that came down to the recycling center during max capacity times, it's really too much for one recycling center attendant to handle. We would have cars lined up for a half an hour before opening, and then it would be just a mass of people trying to drop off their yard waste, and we would fill up and max out on the yard waste sometimes within 15 to 20 minutes, which means that a lot of residents were unable to drop off, and with limited hours, it created a lot of challenges. So I think coming up with some solutions to meet the community's needs and responding to the desire to have more of those solutions would be a good foot forward for planning for fall operations.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, it's fine.
Oh, I'll just start by saying they weren't prepared remarks. They were just bullet points to keep my propensity for rambling at a minimum. Speaking of preparing for the fall, I guess this is an anecdotal question, but I guess I'm wondering if the extreme demand this spring, in your opinion, might have been due in part to the fact that the usual yard waste hauling we would have seen our previous fall was curtailed because of the early winter snows. I know a lot of people that weren't able to rake, weren't able to do much of anything because it was 80 degrees one day, and then 10 days later it was 40 degrees, and then 10 days after that, it was still on the ground, right? So again, I want to make sure we're prepared, but also, again, I was just wondering if you heard anything about folks that were, apart from the contractors that were quasi abusing the system very early on, if we were seeing a lot of that, people basically doubling up what we would have seen in fall coming in springtime as well.
Yeah, I think that could have come into play some, but really, I mean, there's a lot of residents with a lot of yard waste. And so, I have been down there multiple times and checked every single residential address, and people are just bringing in their own truckload from their garden, which is a pretty normal amount per resident, and it will still fill up within the half hour. So it's a pretty, and we have experienced this in years past as well. So spring is definitely the highest peak time for these operations. Fall is not as much, but we have experienced it before.
Okay, thank you.
So maybe Ariana, if there's a fee involved that would help pay for it, they could be open more times. And allow us to like open up the service, but it just wouldn't be free anymore. We'd have more days that it's open, so it wouldn't have this impact, this bottleneck. That's, I would certainly witness that, you know, filling up 15 minutes. That was like, that happened like 3 times in a row, just so in the spring. You think the fees would maybe spread that out if you open up longer hours, maybe?
Yeah, potentially. I think, you know, looking at the budget, like I said, and then being just communicative and transparent with community members, because the understanding from community members right now is that they are paying for the service.
Right.
And so that brings about, you know, the challenge between residents that are living in the city versus that fine line of the urban growth area, for instance. You know, are they paying significantly different fees, and are any of those fees contributing to this service? And if not, I think they would be interested in contributing. They just need more communication and transparency about the operations.
Right.
Ariana, do you keep track of the number of people that drop? Because that'll be a key factor for you to do the math, because all I have is totals. I just have dollar figures. I don't have any user data.
We have attempted a few times, but honestly, it's been so crazy down there during the operations that you would have to have a separate person just for counting people. So it's rough estimates.
Okay, well, I can get you my data. I just don't have user data.
Yeah.
Would it make sense for us to, instead of bringing it to Winton, just bring it on to Chelan, the Chelan brush down and Icicle Road to be a shorter haul? We could get it done quicker, and would they let us do that? Because it meets the needs of the quarantine, right? And they grind it. And so eventually, maybe if Winton still wanted to grind, to bring the grind up there, it would be a lot cheaper, it would be less hauls. So I don't know, would that be like a quicker emptying of our bin, so we provide more service and be overall cheaper? That help.
A good question. What if that, we have to see if Chelan County would be open to it. Would essentially be, they'd be accepting a quasi-commercial operation if we dumped all that.
They have a lot of space.
They do.
And then we could use that almost as a transfer site, let them grind it, we might have to contribute. And then take the grind up to Winton to let Winton have their.
Chelan County, yeah, Chelan County does currently take their wood chips. They did this past year up to Winton for processing.
Because that might lower our overall cost and create a solution for us.
No, I'll definitely explore that.
Thank you.
I think if you do look at trying to expand, it's not gonna help you expand hours, you have to expand days.
I think you need to expand.
Well, the days, because that thing is filling up, so if you're open another hour, it's already full.
It's a day thing.
It's a day thing, so that you can dump it between times. I
Yeah,
mean,
we got 2 containers and then just get shuttling them back and forth to the waste dump at Icicle. You might have a lot more opportunity to serve the people.
well, again,
And
it's
like-
probably have to come with-
We have one person.
Additional staff.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I get it.
Staff, right.
Yeah.
One of our big pieces has also just been educating community members and residents about the services that are offered now through Winton. And so previously, when the city set up these operations, Winton was not available for city residents. So now that they are available, it's kind of a standard, you know, U-Haul situation for community members. So we've been trying to get the word out on that, and for having people to haul it on their own.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Ariana.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ari.
Thanks.
Sorry.
All right, we'll move on. Our next
Thanks,
is the
Ariana.
developer extension agreement.
So this discussion item tonight is a preliminary discussion prior to this evening's meeting, where this is actually an action item before the council. Prior to that, however, I wanted to give the council an opportunity to review the developer extension agreement, ask any questions that you may have. This is the first time you've seen this. So the bottom line is that this developer extension agreement is between the city and Widener Milkman LLC, which is associated with the Leavenworth House development that's behind Safeway. A little bit of history, there was a stormwater component of that project that was still pending. They bonded for this improvement. This was a result of infiltration gallery that didn't meet expectations. So, the Widener Group had an option to pursue either deep injection wells to meet the stormwater requirements or pursue an outfall to the Wenatchee River through a piece of property at the end of Zeltstrasse, which they preferred to go to the latter option. And there's an opportunity here with the city to partner with Molitor Development and the Widener Group to basically purchase additional capacity to that outfall, because they're only required to develop the outfall to meet their stormwater requirements. The opportunity here is that this would provide a path forward for the full development behind the Safeway basin to discharge the stormwater directly to the Wenatchee River, of course, meeting basic treatment requirements prior to, not to go too far afield, but the Wenatchee River is flow control exempt. So that area behind Safeway, if they're able to discharge directly to the Wenatchee River, they don't have to retain the 25-year storm deck on site treatment, send it down to the river. So again, this developer extension agreement between the city and Widener would essentially allow the city to buy capacity, upsizing that outfall from 12 inches to 24, and also extend a little bit of the storm pipe up Zeltstrasse with an amount not to exceed at $55,000. And in terms of funding sources, would come from the city's stormwater fund. That being said, I'll be quiet now.
I have a question for Lilith. Well, back in the day when there was the big fall de gras over that, and the city allowed Widener Group to open their last apartment building. Did that ever get fixed or solved, or?
That's what this is. So they had a 2-year bond and we're at the end of that 2-year
Okay.
bond, and this will rectify all of that and provide the city an opportunity to rectify a prior error with Hampton stormwater facility and provide for the additional build out of that area back there. So
Are the Riverbend Drive folks happy about this, or do you?
I haven't heard directly from them. They are selling this property to the developer.
Okay,
And the developer will make all the improvements and then dedicate all the improvements and the outfall land to the city, so that we have long-term control of the area and manage and maintain the facility.
is that down by Riverbend Road?
That's right.
And so the water one that's going over is now going to go under?
It went over the road because the piping hadn't been completed per the construction standards, and then also the pipe was smaller. So after that initial flooding events that occurred, they increased that pipe size, they made the proper connections, and we haven't had any overflow since then that I'm aware of.
And so how's that water going to get to the river?
Yes, there's a pipe underground.
Underneath, so Riverbend Drive Road,
Mhm.
and the pipe goes under there and down through that property. And are the folks, I guess nobody's complaining then, I hope they know about it.
Yes, they do know
Okay.
about it, and yes, there haven't been any complaints that I'm aware of, and the permitting process included the city and the county. And what the developer is gonna do is that outflow area, just past Riverbend Road, is gonna be enlarged. They're gonna have more rocks to protect from erosion, and so it'll be all completely redone.
So you're saying with impervious paving that may be developed behind Safeway, that area, there's another, Quinta going in addition to Hampton. There'll be more parking for the climbing gym, and then possibly 2 other developments, which will eventually have maybe paved parking, and then obviously buildings that shed water into areas where stormwater collects. We'll have an increase in stormwater.
Yes, they'll still need to make some improvements to get to this facility.
Okay.
This facility is at the end of the road.
Right.
But we have already been talking with the rock climbing gym about providing a larger pipe size to their development to reach this facility.
Right, because there's already a really big pipe swale behind the parking area.
We'll have a bigger one going in.
Yeah, and the pipe diameter was determined based on a basin analysis. So basically, Grant Osborne looked at the area and made some assumptions of max impervious, and the size of the pipe was derived from that.
Okay, but now we're looking at more impervious, which would create the need.
No,
The
they took that
It
in.
was full build out was.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So that was extrapolated. to
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. That's kind of the question. Thank you.
And the climbing gym, or climbing wall. If you have, we have the hotel there now, and then the Hampton. And then Zell's Crossing going down here. So is that gonna go in that area?
Yeah, there'll be one on the west side by Zellstrasse, and then there's a spa, like hot tub spa, and then potentially a nice going in. All through up there. But the La Quinta is gonna be directly across the back street. I forget the name of it.
Of the Hampton,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
For the
Ward Strauss.
Wardstrasse, thank you. Yeah, so that would be La Quinta. Wardstrasse, and then there's still like another 12 acres. So
So is that Tom Lynn, has he sold that or he's doing that?
definitely sold it to La Quinta, but he's.
No, I meant the other part.
The rock
Okay.
gym he sold as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sold property.
Okay,
So just so you know, Safeway is here.
Yeah.
This is the Link Park and Ride. The new hotel is proposed to be here. If you haven't seen it, the design plans for the overall structure went to the design review board so that they could get approval of the shape and weight and configuration of the building, so they have the proper foundation. It's not 100% approved by the design review board yet.
Right.
But those permits are in, they have a grading permit request in and a CEPA, which we're starting the process. Then behind the parking right here is a climbing gym. There's actually an access easement, 50
Yeah.
foot. And the climbing gym. And then behind that, they're talking about doing a spa, outdoor spa place, but
Northeast corner.
we haven't gotten that permit yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's just from the preliminary master plans, and it's more like a hand sketch, so.
we'll see how that goes.
And this agreement tonight is just.
Just with the store.
Just up here primarily.
Will all that new development be routed then through the pipe that we're talking about upgrading?
It could be. We planned for that with the engineer, so that we have the right configuration of the outfall flex pipe.
So is it possible to have the future development pay for this? Upsize, because the city's not doing anything back there, right, except permitting.
Terms of,
Seems like the developers that developed the Bear Lot would pay to upsize the outfall pipe.
we could, that would be like a latecomers agreement.
Yeah.
Type of approach. That is something to consider. I do know that in order for this developable land, if they wish to discharge this pipe, they're gonna have to extend that trunk line up to their development on their dime.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So the trunk line he's talking about is from about here all the way through. So any development hooking in here, say the rock gym, they have to extend the pipe to connect with the new pipe that's going in and across.
Well, they'll be tearing up that new street. Crazy.
So in terms of the latecomer agreement, I am not an expert at that whatsoever. I don't know if that ship has sailed, if they have to be on the title of these properties before they purchase it. I'm not 100% certain about that.
We hadn't worked that through, but this overall cost is still less than the repair cost of the Hampton. If we were to take on the
And
Hampton.
that's on us.
That's on
That
us.
one we.
That's what I needed. to clarify.
This is less.
We're covering our.
And I was gonna
Yes, from-
say,
We're killing two birds with.
the reimbursement agreement, the cost of attorney's fees and everything, you're just better off doing this.
I mean, it's in my mind, we're building this out, we're building this outfall out for future development, so. It felt like that future development should pay for it.
That's good, Bob. That's a good question. So the bond, that was all initiated right when I first started. So we'll jump in if I misstep here. The bond was gonna cover, in the event that developer failed, exactly. At the
Which is what they're supposed to now.
Yeah. So this is basically in lieu of the infiltrate deep injection wells that they were bonding for. How much is the bond? I don't know.
Was it 160? 157,000 pops in my head first thing, but it was the 2 injection wells at 200%.
Tracy.
And there'll be, all that will be on city water.
They already are on city water.
I know, but there's nothing there. But I mean, the new things that are going in will be on city water.
There's future connections already stubbed out.
And were they on this sheet that we saw earlier?
They are not, no. They will be with our new water system.
Update.
Thanks for answering all the questions.
Yeah, no, good question.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
And Will helped me out quite a bit on this, so I just want to acknowledge that as well.
She's a team player.
Right.
All right, well, we're need council updates, suggestions for future agenda items.
I'd like to see a review of preparations for fire for the city. Like a threat, like what happened with terrorists, like, I'd like to see what we're gonna do. We've had that once before, but I think it's worth revisiting.
The evacuation,
Yeah.
things like that.
We kind of heard that thing from the terrorists. That was a really excellent thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth something we should hear every year, myself. I think that we should be well versed in the threat of wildfire to our city, especially with increased tourists, but not just the tourists, just the people who live here. We've got some vulnerabilities, and I think we need to be well aware of what those are. So I think that'd be from my standpoint, that's what we're.
Yeah, that's a great point, Steve, because I mean, having been involved in what's called, the biggest threat to the city isn't just fire, it's ember storms. What they call extreme fire behavior, when the fires happen in wildland arena. The ember storms come in, the ember storms hit homes. And that's kind of what happened when actually it's a Sleepy Hollow fire, then the homes catch, and then there's a domino effect. So in California, they started working on technologies to coat the homes with gels and foams that last, 8 to 20 hours. Current foams are carcinogenic and they last 3 or 4 hours. So instead of having the fire department sit around twiddling its thumbs, waiting for the fire to come hit, you could have them going to coat these homes and prevent this kind of storm. That's the technology that's available. I've had these discussions with Kelly. He's not that interested in it, but I'd like to see if the city could kind of drop their hand and say, maybe we need to explore this better, because that can make a huge difference. And if we have an exposure, fire home to home to home, like happened in Seattle, where those homes burned, the embers from those homes went and burned the fruit warehouses and the recycling plant, fertilizer plant, and have that not happen, because those homes wouldn't catch it, the embers. 80% of homes that burn in wildfire burn for embers. And if you can keep the embers from getting in the homes, what's great with Lilith has started is the fire retrofit, which we're going to talk about. That's now 50,000. It'd be great to see that around 300,000, because we have a lot of homes that could use that. And talk to the fire department about implementing new technologies to prevent ember intrusion. That's highly support that.
Yeah, you talk about the defensible spaces and stuff though too. It was interesting, that same presentation, and Zeke, you saw it. You saw the ones that, total devastation, but the ones who had done their own protection, standing unburnt in the middle of total devastation, time and time again, and this people individually. This guy made the point, government's not gonna do it.
Right.
It's gonna be the individuals that are gonna have to make their own defense.
The DNR offers 50% cost share to get that done. So like, when you're talking about how to, get rid of medium fuels, and then the biggest threat is when embers hit the home and drop. What's at the base of your home? If it's debris, then it's gonna crawl up your siding and douse the home on fire. Or if it's just non-combustible rock, great, but they pay for that. The DNR will help pay for that stuff. So that is a little bit of government support.
So, any other items?
I brought this up before, and since Little is here, pressure's on now. Could you take 10 or 15 minutes, one study session and explain in detail Title 21, how you guys use it? How you do the 10% deviation when you make it,
Sure.
so that we understand it tighter. Somebody asks a question.
So take the presentation we did at the retreat and just focus it in
Just the title.
on probably just the administrative part of
Exactly,
it.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I'd support that for sure.
sure.
And also from the retreat, now we brought that up, it'd be great if we could explore a recreation level of service, because we said we didn't have. one. It'd be nice to kind of say, hey, what do we want to give the community as a level of service for recreation, based on the recreation needs assessment.
Free soccer balls.
Free soccer balls, I love that, it's phenomenal. But yeah, that
I
kind
love
of.
what office is. Because we're a sponsor, not a grant.
So just a heads up on the audit entrance interview, the auditors are
Right.
in process. They'll be actually physically here on site tomorrow and the next day, going through some preliminary items. I had initially scheduled them for the entrance interview for your next study session. And at that time, they decided it was too far out. Well, now it's just right around the corner and they're still not ready for the entrance interview. So they've lost their slot. We did fill it with something else. But the entrance typically you all don't go to. You all go to the exit.
Right.
And the entrance, you're more than welcome to go to, but I think the auditors will be reaching out to you individually to get your preference on if you do want to attend. We can do less than a quorum. We can do multiple types of, because the entrance interview is just like a 15-20 minute Q&A with them, and they just give you a basic of what they're going to be doing and allow you to ask any questions. So to be continued, but it will not be on your next study session.
I would like to see ASAP moratorium on B&Bs.
Didn't we have the discussion just a couple of?
We've had the discussion and nothing has ever happened. It doesn't go anywhere. And I think it's time, looking at Maggie's last report, there are 16 B&Bs right now. There's 3 that are kind of in the hopper and 3 that aren't permitted. I don't think that they're going to be permitted, which makes 20. And I remember back in the day when Nate Pate was the person, what do they call him? With the Lilith. And there were 6. And even back then, I was trying to get a moratorium so we could do a study on it. And it doesn't matter how many times I bring it up, nothing happens. So said my piece.
All right, well, let's take a brief break if nobody has anything, and we'll come back and start. Order of the meeting. Actually have enough time to get a break.
Amazing.
Well, we just had the conversation 2 months ago.
Yeah, she's definitely on the.
For regulation.
Okay.
I know, but the PC that came up. They're talking about it. Rushing up.
One lane for everybody's got.
Well, that's why they want to go, that's why they.
He stopped in June
Getting the applications.
Yeah.
But once it's on the agenda, some more. And you'll get applications.
It's probably still there.
Bring it to everybody. For your packet.
Sorry, I only saw it on.
There's a better workplace.
No,
because the other one was given out.
Brush fire.
We talked about using complaints about well done. No, that's not because it'll encourage other people. But I want to. I'm gonna. This littlest department is impatient when they come through.
Well, don't tell him. Allegedly, there's one lane open with that.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay.
Part of these complaints.
Okay.
That's what you're into it.
Part of this complaint, or even, she's saying a lack of sleep. She's saying a lack of sleep.
Yeah, and they don't even.
Yeah.
I don't have any.
Number 15.
We never have any. So I don't-
I will check.
You know, it's funny because I was just.
Moratorium.
No, wait a minute.
Add moratorium. And then what?
And then there's another one near Walker.
I think we.
For 6 months. Yeah.
Yes.
What do we got here?
Okay, until what?
Adventure park.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, with
let's-
Yep, you're ready.
Okay. Call to order the meeting of June 13th, Leavenworth City Council. Please stand for the flag salute. Jason, you want to start us?
Sure. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Sharon Waters.
Flint Strand. Jason Lundgren.
And Hesper.
Zeke Reister.
Marco Aurelio, Tibor Rock.
Wow, all 7 and all present here. That's a first in a while. That's great. We have a consent agenda, and before we get a motion there, I think somebody wants to move.
I do. I'd like an action item number 15, add moratorium on B&Bs for 6 months until the PC can do their work.
Do I have a second?
Who can do that one?
The planning.
Okay, they want to, okay.
Second.
I'm sorry, who's that?
Clint.
Thank you.
Plan. Okay. And let's add that to the agenda. And now, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the change.
Mayor, point of order. Shouldn't the council vote on the amendment to the agenda?
Because if they don't vote to add it to the agenda, it doesn't get added to the agenda.
There's a first and a second, but there wasn't a vote to add it to the agenda.
Yeah, fine.
Okay. Right. All those in favor of adding the moratorium item number 15 to the agenda, let me see your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
I'm recusing myself.
And
I'm
you're-
building B&B, so
Yeah.
I'm just gonna stay out of it. Keep my hands
No.
clear.
Okay, so we had 5 to 1 to add it. And 1 abstention. Now I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the agenda as amended.
Consent agenda
Okay,
with the addition.
with the addition. Okay.
And I'll second.
People moved. Marco seconded. All in favor, let me see your hands. Passes unanimously. Next item is comments from the public on items not on the agenda. Anybody either here or out there that wants to speak? I'm not seeing anybody get up. So we'll move from there to our presentation on our water use efficiency report. Tracy.
Before we begin, I just want to do a brief intro. It's okay. So Tracy had been at the city for a number of years. How many exactly?
27.
27.
Yeah.
I just want to highlight that this will be Tracy's last presentation. For the-
Yeah, he's on the water.
Love it too.
Check it out.
So, thank you, and my once a year, put on my fancier nose. You never know what you're gonna get into on a birthday with the water plant. So, my report today is required by the state, and it's our water use efficiency for last year. And we reported, you got the, see that,
Okay, so
I may get off
you
track.
can use your pointer, but
Okay.
you'll have to cue me for your slides.
Okay, oh, for the slides, okay. So it's for last year, and we'll go to the next slide. And that report, and I believe this is in your packet, and if this is for your knowledge too.
I don't think the presentation was in the packet.
The
Oh,
water
okay.
use efficiency report is under tab 7. We don't accept this.
Okay. So what we do is, I'm keeping track every day. Come in and I keep track of well production and our water plant production. And at the end of the month, each month, I'm reporting that to the state. Also, at the same time, we are charging for that water by the gallon, and we have that all reported in our bias records and our new reading radio reads that was installed 2 years ago. Not all places got them right at the beginning, and we're still getting those tightened up, and it does show improvement by we're finding some stuff. So the next slide. We're comparing my production to the consumption, which is billed water consumption. So that's off of the meter reads in town. Next slide. And I guess that's a daily on the production, and the consumption reads are same time each month. And now with the radio reads, it's year round. We're not having that kind of, the underground meters. It's now still being recorded and read each month. So that's gonna tighten things up and show improvements, and it's gonna make better sense to us as the purveyor of our water, what's going on throughout the year.
Tracy, are we at 100% replacement on the radio meters?
We are doing an audit right now, and I would believe.
We're not totally 100% because I reported this prior to. Do you have some places where we believe the houses were constructed over top of the old meters? No, I mean, I would say we're way upper 90s, like.
Okay.
Yeah, close.
99.
Yeah, okay. So
But,
great
yeah.
question in my head.
It's still, I always say the dream world is, say 100%, but there's never a dream world. And on the ground, there's always something.
Well, it's good to have an engineering number.
So, okay, next slide. Production through the year and showing how we're billing through the year. So again, August and July are our big months. And then we go down pretty low in November, December, January, February, ramp back up each year. And I would say that this is probably, I'm looking at the bar graph, that might be 2021.
Right.
Because I think August last year, we were the highest month for my last look at that. Next slide. And water losses, malfunctioning meters, incorrect meter factors. I think we've gotten those pretty well reined in. But that was we had a lot of different meters out there. So now that we're 99% reading, that is a huge improvement. Data errors, leakage in distribution transmission lines, and leakage on service lines up to the customer's meter. I want to say that I suspect, being a person on the ground, and I am always running out when there's a repair, getting my museum pieces. I would imagine that a lot of our holes are in service lines, because last year we had one of our goals, we had American Leak Detection come out, and they were doing listening of our main lines. from fire hydrant to fire hydrant. And there was no smoking gun out there on our big main lines. But from what I gathered from, the monthly museum pieces that come to me, say it's service lines. And that's our silent asset in the ground, is all of our water lines. It's silent, and it often doesn't appear because we are a river valley. So we're a lot of gravel, a lot of sand. So if we're lucky, if the water comes up and someone sees it, and we get the call and go after it. But there's a lot of loss that's going straight down back into our aquifer. But that's our asset, is to try to figure out how to get something going to repair these service lines. Knoxville and Yakima has a very comprehensive program doing that, and they have been able to really reduce their water loss. Next slide.
Tracy, did you guys, whoever, ever find the water meters that are out there, but you couldn't find them whether 3 or 4?
So right now, we're going through a water meter audit. They actually started this week.
Okay.
So it's all hands on deck
All
for
right.
the utility division, where they're going to every single meter, writing down the tab tag, serial number. And our goal is to find put this project to bed and find out where the ones are. And we likely will have to install new service lines and meters for these few the meters are unknown.
Right. Is there an estimated time that this maybe will be finished?
So the water meter, we're anticipating a water meter audit to be complete this month. And
Okay,
depending on
this month.
what we find, we'll develop an action plan accordingly.
Thanks.
But here's an example. I worked really closely with our Parks Department, and John Shams and I came up, and again, this is estimates. Last year, he discovered a Enchantment Park leak. He said that was 50,000 gallons a year, likely an ongoing issue for many years, but they repaired that last August. They found it and repaired it. We're becoming more aware and more focused on what's out there and getting that repaired as quickly as possible. Another Enchantment Park leak was 5,000 gallons. They jumped on that right away and got it repaired quickly. Another one was commercial in 8th Street, 8,000 gallons. I believe this was leaking at a good flow for several days before repair. And again, he's contacting me. Hopefully this is helpful. It is extremely helpful that our departments are estimating those for me and getting back, saying that was repaired quickly. But those were the 3 big hard ones. Again, our meters, that water's turned off in the winter time. But again, that shows you how much water you can be losing.
Tracy, I want to ask, because I remember this slide from last year's presentation, and I don't think we really touched on it, but 2019 is when we installed the new meters. It was just before winter. And so council, you can see we were at that 33% loss, and then 2020, we dropped to 22. So the meters themselves were, in my mind, a big factor. I also saw the revenue go up from us actually tracking it better and collecting it better from the finance side.
So it was getting used, it just wasn't getting metered.
Well, remember our meters were
Yeah,
old
no,
and we
that's
were
what I'm
losing and the customer was winning, and so that was very helpful.
Yeah,
We're getting some water.
Worn out meters won't detect those low flows.
You do see that you got 22%, a 16.4, and a 23.6. So they have me report that average for the last 3 years. The average is 20.7. The average in 2021 was 24.1. So we're showing improvement. The big thing is the state wants us to set a goal of trying to get down to 10%.
And do we have an active strategy to find these leaks? So I remember Director Walkover was talking about acoustic searching or.
That was the American leak detection.
Yeah.
That came last fall. And they did an active study, and we had Aaron Minot working with them.
Okay.
And so he was helping them, approach, get the right meters, the right fire hydrants and they listened. They didn't find a big smoking gun leak.
Okay, so, yeah,
Thus, I'm thinking it's in service lines and such.
Okay,
But-
service line, and also too on the icicle transmission main, there's not a lot of good listening points.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so there's
Yeah.
still one.
They're an asset, but they're in the ground, they're silent, we don't see them.
right.
And again, that's a river valley, if they are leaking. It's most likely going right down through the.
Well, when was it, a year ago or 2 years ago there was a big one on the big main on the icicle that was
Yeah, there was a long-term.
long-term leak that was pretty substantial.
5. All in one area.
Yeah.
So how are we now pursuing the leaks, or are we just hoping to find?
So right now, obviously, if it's a mainline break in
Yeah.
the services, that's obvious. In terms of what, the service line is the next program we need to pursue. With both the utility rate study and the water system plan, that I intend to have at least a service line replacement program, at least have a small budget to where we could just start getting these old galvanized service line placed.
Based on the assumption that the way. Okay, that's great. I'm glad we have it moving forward.
And we'll also be replacing all of those as part of the integrated capital improvement program we're talking about.
Okay, good.
We'll replace all the service lines as well.
Okay, that's great. 'Cause, I mean, I'd love to see us get to 10, I agree.
Yeah, and it's, again, we're showing improvement, we're showing that we're closing in on what I'm producing to what we're billing out, we're getting closer and closer. Next slide. Okay, that's our WAC, and let's go to the next one.
So that basically says that over 10% Department of Health is going to work with you to develop some, an action plan.
Yeah, they don't come down with some big fine or enforcement, they go through this, they see if we've got a good active program. We do have, we have in our, let's see, this would be resolution 09-2022. We updated our goals, and this was signed by our mayor. And we want to maintain distribution beach below 10%. We want to reduce residential seasonal outdoor usage by 2% by December 31st, 2028. Goal 3, set a residential use of 200 gallons per day per equivalent residential unit, and that's our.
What year was that, Tracy, that goal?
We did these goals in 2022, last year.
But the target is by 2020.
Yeah.
Wait for the last one.
For all.
How does Okanagan gain?
Yeah, right.
They have a series of back.
They got a secret.
Right. So, but, okay.
Get that siphon working.
That's obviously data.
Something's going on with their
Yeah,
data.
they report it and,
So
but
we,
again, we're up there. City Chelan though has us beat at 33%.
it's got some comparison. But,
So, but again, our goal is to, and you gotta realize, we've got our assets in the ground, but our assets have been in the ground a long time. And if we look at the museum pieces, and I call them museum pieces, but that's what's being dug up actively by our utilities every time they get a call for a leak and whatnot. And if you notice the holes in there, they're big. Our soil is aggressive. It goes after that metal. And so it's just an ongoing, we gotta keep replacing these pipes.
so in your graph here,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think Chelan is 3.3, not 33.
Yeah.
Oh,
At
okay,
least based on the bar chart.
I think.
okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Here I thought we were.
Yeah, we're pretty bad.
We're leaving the pack.
Isn't Shasta County
Isn't the shaft and what?
and Chelan County the same thing, aren't they, or through the PUD?
No, Shastas are.
Separate.
Water district.
Yeah.
District?
Yeah, it's the sewer that's
Or sewer.
Yeah.
And we talked about the reasoning why we think we might be high. I think that was discussed saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's because our pipes are just older than most of, because we've been settled for a long time. Is that it? Because the railway put into the water system a long time ago.
Our first water right was recorded in 1912.
Okay.
And here's another fact to take into consideration. The intake in Screen House was built on the Icicle River 1960, if that's the right. I've been looking for some data on that. So we've been, bringing water into this town for a long time, and it's needs that we've got pipes, investment in the ground that needs to be replaced on a regular basis.
That just, yeah, maybe they haven't done.
Yeah, when it's out in your site, I don't get the calls till there's no water, then I get the calls.
So it's not probably a huge percentage, but the other wild card is that we know there's at least some between here and, I mean, that are out of our Leavenworth area, the sharing meters between homes are not being metered and cutting in. I know they've found some of those in the past.
In the
I don't know.
past.
Right. So I
But,
don't know how you.
yeah, I only know of one home, we went to shut off a meter for one home, and there was a second one on there. And that was a huge, but other than that one, I don't
You don't think it's.
Yeah, I think we pretty much got them per unit now. So, okay, next slide.
And even if they were connecting to that home, we're still getting usage through the
No,
meter.
they were doing
yeah,
it before the meter.
Before the meter, that's when
maybe
we.
a connection, for irrigation purposes, because I do know, I know the previous, I've seen a graph where the distribution system leakage is higher in the summer, so one can speculate that, okay, somebody's irrigating this big demand block.
Who's got the greenest, right?
Now, last year's, we did this, again, the smart water meters and missing meters identified, but we're back out there this month doing the audit to make sure again that we're not missing something. Again, the American Leak Detection, that was completed. Water treatment plant assessment, that includes the pipes from the water plant. You can't, as Gary Osborne, who's doing this assessment for us, you got to address both at the same time. The pipes that I produce that water from the water plant, that water plant needs to be upgraded. She's old, but she's brilliant, but she needs help. But her
She needs
pipes,
a cane. is
I've
what she
only
needs.
pushed so much water, gravity through these pipes coming into town. And so they're addressing, the sizes of the pipes, the ages of the pipes, and maybe boostering at some point to overcome our well project. And then that's the new water use efficiency goals was the ones I read off from. Next slide.
So if you put more pressure on the pipe, it's not gonna give you more. Yep.
I've been accused of that. I've been called and said, are you running a whole bunch of more water? But again, that pipe can only take that volume, that amount of volume. And so if I've got a big well going and it's sending water after it gets out of that well, field both directions, it's going to be the one with the more force behind it. So we have found that running our bigger wells, I can't get that water gravity fed through. So it prevents me from having that option. So I do a lot of dancing with my production throughout the year to make sure. And I'm partial. Yeah, but I'm partial, and this is me. After 27 years, that water plant is fantastic. That's water we need to keep. It's a whole new other drainage in the Wenatchee area, and she deserves some tender loving care and maybe being upgraded quite a bit. And it's been an honest source for years and years, and I hope years to come. Okay, the current goals is to continue to monitor and evaluate the smart meters, improve leak detection, improve data collection, water auditing, and validating practices. Future goals is to establish baseline to evaluate and prioritize repairs, repair and or replace distribution line. That's that ongoing study with what should be done with the water plant. The two coincide. And then upgrade water treatment plant and meet DSL standard, which would be your 10%. So we have, we've done what your goals and we met those last year. We do see a slight improvement on our percent loss. But again, I think we've got an area that has a huge investment. It's underground, we can't see it. But the Parks Department and utilities go after those really fast and repair them. And but it only happens when we see them. So again, we've got a lot of sneaky little leaks out there. So that's our report, and I believe that that's on. I do know that this is for the public. They can see that at any time. And the other report that I put out each year is our water consumer confidence report. It's on our website. Once in a great while, I get a call and someone wants to see the data from this. And it's always a pleasure to put that together because we have extremely good water and our test results reflect that. Currently this week, I'm doing lead and copper. That's every 3 years. And I take that from older homes. We do have aggressive water. So we do treat. The only thing that we add other than a disinfection product, chlorine gas, which I actually support. We do orthophosphate, zinc orthophosphate to protect our pipes. And that is been a requirement by the state. And we monitor that. Our new wastewater plant can get zero, what would that be? Their results.
Phosphorus.
Yeah, they're phosphorus. It doesn't affect them at all. So I'm very proud to say that I think we're on a really good dosing program for protecting our pipes. And I hope this year's test of lead and copper will show that in our results. Like I said, we just sent 7 bottles in today and we got to pick up 3 more and get it in tomorrow. But again, this is all ongoing testing that we do for the Department of Health, and we've got beautiful water. And a lot of people who move up here will stop me and say they love the taste, they love how cold it is. And I love that it's hard to treat because it's so dang clean.
Yes, we don't have a lot of organics, right? Which means we have low trihalomethanes.
Yes,
Great.
yes, at the end of the system, so that reacting with our chlorine. Yeah, we don't have that.
Those
Yeah.
are quite big risks.
People who would have a big reservoir that might have algae and whatnot.
Yeah.
But man, our water's coming out of both ranges, fast and clean and cold. That's the key thing too, it's cold.
Yeah,
I remember when they talked about bottling it.
Yeah, there
Remember
was a
that?
company,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I don't know what happened to
I
them.
don't either, but I remember I was on council at the time.
But I'm very proud of both these reports. I think we're going in the right direction. And I thank you for letting me dress up and come in and splatter the whatever when I show up. So
Tracy, I was gonna ask you, to be specific on the service lines. That's your main, what comes out the main line in the street, goes
Yes.
to the resident, that's the service line.
That's the service line.
And that's sort of the possibly the suspect that wouldn't leave out.
Yeah,
Did you get a guess?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you look over there, they can develop pretty good sized hole.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Tracy, thank you very much for 27 years.
Yeah.
Serves the city of Austin. Your enthusiasm is really contagious to school.
Thanks. Thank you
It's
very
neat
much.
having people work for the city that are so enthusiastic.
That love their plant.
I did have maybe a curveball or hardball question for you.
Sure.
When we have a fire at the icicle, a wildfire,
Mhm.
and that creek is not so beautiful and pristine and it's spitting out sooty water for a year or so, what?
It didn't happen in 94 though. After 94, there was a lot of worries about that. And it did not happen. It didn't close down that whole drainage. But Stan, who was working that plant at the time in 94 and 95, he was really looking for, their main worry is not so much that soot, is land failure, because you've lost your trees that's
Yeah.
holding.
Erosion.
So,
suspended soil, so.
yeah, yeah, into use, yeah, so
Huh.
we do get those because of that steep, I deal with those almost on an annual basis, steep sided walls, thin soil on granite.
Yeah.
And you get a good thunderstorm or thunderstorm up there, and that can release something way up high, and that river can turn chocolate brown for a week.
Yeah.
But then it clears up.
And that filters through our sand gun, right?
I turn off the water plant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we rely on the well. So I try not to have that just all end up in the water plant, because then I try to backwash you forever.
Yeah, we have a sand gun.
We have a multi-medium.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got anthracite coal,
Yeah,
then sand,
okay.
then fine gravel, bigger gravel.
Okay, great.
So it's a multi-medium.
How often do we change the answers then?
This year, we treated 2 cells, took out about 8 inches and both put in brand new anthracite. Then in the next 2 cells that were treated the year before the same way, we just added fresh anthracite. So we're due soon for a total rebuild of all the layers, but that shows up. And so that's an ongoing maintenance each spring when we're having good runoff.
Yeah, good turbid water.
Yeah, turbid water is when we get in there, empty everything out and do that maintenance.
Thank you for the tech talk. And how often do we backlog?
Right now, I'm backwashing about every, let's see. I'm doing my zeros because of the meter, 100,000 gallons. So it's about every other day right now, because I've got, running pretty high flows and the NTUs are up there. But come summer, if all goes well, I can do 2 days between backwashes. However, if I really get a demand and I'm running up to 860 gallons a minute, then you start having a backwash almost every day. So it's the volume you're running through the water plant at the site.
Awesome. And then you guys do micro testing prior to coming in, or do you?
Yes, we've got real good equipment that measures right down to the NTUs. It's all light, going through light eye.
Oh, yeah, the turbidity, but
Yes.
you do microbiology testing before. Like lab bacteria.
Okay, yes, that's every month, and we do a raw sample every month, and then we have, throughout our system, we constantly check for any kind of bacteria that could be out there, but it's not.
Yeah. So when you retire, you're gonna write the art of drinking water book?
I think the 2 operators that I'm working with right now, they are gonna do a tremendous job, and maybe they'll be the ones who are. I'm gonna go photograph.
I was gonna say, she'll be the photographer for the
Yeah,
photos.
I have another life that I want to.
Great, thank you for sharing.
Thanks,
Thanks a lot,
Tracy.
Tracy.
And I'll pick up that museum tomorrow, so don't do it. I'll get.
Your museum over
Yeah.
there, yes.
And thank you again.
Unless anybody wants
Please don't
those
see you
pieces,
tonight.
right? All right, we'll move into resolutions, ordinance orders, and other business. Item 8. Acceptance of the USDA food waste reduction pilot project. Okay, Cal?
Thank you, Ms. Brewer. Council, before you, we are happy to present this. It's been a little while waiting. We do have Thad and Robert with us today from Winton, and Ariana is with us on Zoom as well. So she can help answer any questions because she is the one who actually wrote this particular grant for us. And we were awarded the grant, so it's a total of about $75,000. And it includes approximately $77,000 in matching in-kind funds that is currently designed within the grant to come from the Winton folks who will be bringing equipment in and out. Out of pocket for the city, none. There is $27,000 embedded within it that would help offset city staff costs as well. And then there's a large portion of it that is for Waste Loop potentially to manage and do a lot of outreach and education. Ariana, do you want to just take questions about the grant, or did you want to give them a little more info than I did? I think you're on mute. No?
Yeah, I think that's a great information. Hello?
We
Slow.
can hear you now, but we can't see you, but that's okay. We can hear you.
Okay, well, thanks for the intro, Chantel. Yeah, we're really excited about this grant opportunity, recognizing that the city has been interested in sustainability and waste reduction efforts for several years, and this is really an opportunity to support movement that is already taking place, as well as expanding it. And so Winton has been doing great work with starting the hauling operations for food waste in the community. So this is an opportunity to support those efforts, as well as broaden that to look at food waste prevention at large, which includes looking at prevention and rescue in our community of food waste. So just open up to questions if anyone has any.
That's great step. Nice move.
Yeah, I'm really happy about seeing, I saw it at the school the other day where they have different food bins. In terms of where the food is separated, the kids are able to separate it quite well. Are you getting good compliance from the kids at the school?
Yeah, the students have been doing a great job. We usually have volunteers that work with the students and staff for the first week of operations, and then they take it from there. So they've been really responsive and receptive to that. And then we've been able to roll out some education within the classrooms to give background about the importance of compost and why they're separating things in their lunch lines. And we look forward to being able to offer additional educational opportunities for those students in all of the grade levels.
Super. And can that model be transferred to restaurants here in town?
That's part of the plan.
So, yeah, so Winton is taking the lead on working with all of the restaurants. And like I said, this is really supporting current efforts and being able to potentially offset some of the costs and just reduce barriers to move the whole program forward with the support of the city.
Okay, thank you.
From a management perspective of the grant, Ariana and I will work together. It is a grant applied for through the city by the city. So I will be involved with that and helping her with reimbursement requests, but she'll be doing the quarterly reporting requirements and annual report requirements and closeout requirements. Babette, Thad, did you guys want to add anything tonight to this?
I just like.
You don't have to. I just, if
Oh,
you wanted
up there.
to add anything.
No, I would say I think it is a good opportunity. I think we do see some momentum in town. I think support like this for our commercial business needs and our residential people will be greatly appreciated. I look forward to continuing to work with UV Men and Waste Loop and their resource recovery. So this is all coming down to a new law that was passed. And so it's nice to have a little momentum and a little city support to help those businesses and everybody else in the community get on board.
Ariana, how are you accessing the restaurants? Like, how do you bring them into the circle of compost?
Robette will be able to answer that question the best in terms of restaurant work, because she's already working with a lot of restaurants. So I'll let her take that one.
I'd like to say it's a lot. I think the last time I gave the data over to Tom, I think we have 3 hotels on board, 6 or 7 restaurants. And then our largest push has actually been from the community for the community composting program. And that just passed zoning, and we're going to be able to provide more drop-off locations. So we'll work continually with Willett and everybody else that we need to manage and build that program. But what happens when I go into a restaurant, I just talk to them and see what they're doing, what they want to do. Does this fit with their goals? Do they know what it is? So it starts from a very early, just open conversation, and then I go into the back of their house, and I work with them. And look at what's gonna work best in the kitchen. And so we go through logistics, and we actually are providing each business currently with at least a month audit where they don't pay for the service. Just so that they can learn and not feel like they're missing out because they're not filling their bin or something. So it's a kind of a slow process. I think the biggest challenges that I've had is that some restaurants are within a building that is managed by somebody else. And so some people want to do it and are willing to pay the cost to do it, and others would like to see that come from the building management side to pay for the cost of food waste. But I think currently on average, based on the data I sent to Tom, we're at like 2 tons a week. So we've already actually met the requirements of this grant.
Okay.
But I do think it shows the community and the commercial areas the support for this, and that the city is willing to help out. And so it'll be interesting to see, and then I've been limited with where I can be in 20 places at once, and usually it's only one. And so this gives us an opportunity to hopefully get somebody in that can work more in the community with the businesses.
As a position.
Yeah, because right now I'm challenged with the day-to-day stuff that happens at Vinton.
Right.
I also do marketing, I do outreach, I do sales. So it'll provide a little bit, a great opportunity for somebody, and yeah.
Okay. Thanks, thank you. I kind of close it out.
So I can speak as a consumer. I've got 2 yards on my garden. It's the best garden I've had in years.
That's the compost.
Yeah, their compost. Yeah, it's great. I would entertain a motion.
Leavenworth City Council moves to authorize to authorize the finance director to accept and sign the USDA food waste reduction pilot project.
Second. Moved by Marco, seconded by Ann. Any other questions? All in favor, let me see your hands. Passes unanimously. And the next item.
Nice job, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Ariana. It's a great step forward.
Thank you, Ariana. I'll see you Thursday.
All right. Resolution 07-2023, the financial policy update, Chantel.
Okay, council, it's time to approve your financial policy update. You did last look at this on May 9th at the study session with all your red lines. There have been no additional changes on my part, nor have I received any comments or suggestions for any further changes from any of the councils. So unless you have any questions, we're ready to approve. It'll be audited too, by the way. Last year's audit included a requirement to add the EFT transactions, and that was something that we did incorporate after the last audit. So
So we got a $300,000 reserve for lodging tax.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's. You can burn through 300 grand.
we will visit this every year.
Okay.
And you have a lot more in undedicated reserves. All of the lodging tax funds are technically reserved. But yeah, the 300K is your emergency contingency fund. Yeah, we can definitely talk about changing that.
Major fire, that's still have operating, so we can advertise, get the, even you can burn grant doing that stuff.
Right, and that's the one that we would drop below, but we're not even close to that, so.
Yeah.
Okay. I just say keep it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were around when we instituted this specific reserve, and it wasn't as high as 3 at the time. And I remember we did have the fire.
Yeah.
And we gave funding to the chamber to do some blasts in Seattle that, hey, we're not on fire. And we did spend about $150,000 to $200,000, I think, at that time. Yeah. Yeah. Advertising was expensive.
I would. You can set up it, that'd be great. But
All right. Okay. Sounds good.
We have about 15 times that reserve right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would entertain motion.
Livermore City Council moves to approve resolution 07-2023, amending the hiring policy.
Second.
Moved by Ann, seconded by Jason. Any other questions? All in favor, let me see your hands. Passes unanimously. Ordinance 1674 salary schedule, Selby.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. At the June. Was it the May PRSA meeting?
May 10th.
May 10th PRSA board meeting. The board asked staff to increase the pay for the pool employees an additional $2 per hour. Because there was some difficulty in recruiting applicants for lifeguards and for assistant pool manager. No, assistant managers are fine, and swim lessons. So we did do that, and that's what this salary schedule is for your consideration tonight. Just to give you a brief update on the pool right now while we're discussing this, because this was the impetus for this proposed change. We currently have 16 certified lifeguards on roster. Kelly Lemons, who is on Zoom right now, our pool manager, has completed two lifeguard trainings. We have 16 certified lifeguards on roster right now. We have another 4 when I last talked with her who were trained up. They just needed to pass their written exam. Then we have another 10 lifeguards who will be going through training Friday, Saturday, Sunday of this weekend with a third-party lifeguard trainer.
That number of 10, Selby, not to interrupt you, but that number of 10, some of those still need to pass a swim test. So I'm not sure if we'll get all of them.
Got you. So we could have as many as 30 on staff. Right now, I believe everybody was given the current pool schedule. So this is the schedule that we are planning on for this summer operation. We're currently in preseason right now because school is still in session, but starting Monday, we'll be rolling out a 6-day schedule. So the plan is currently to be open on Saturdays from noon to 6 p.m. And Monday through Friday, and the schedule is in front of you. Chantel also put together a little bit of research on the compensation for a couple of pools in our area. So right now, we're paying lifeguards between $22 and $24 an hour. Cashmere is still paying $15.74. And Wenatchee is paying the same, which is minimum wage. So we are already 50% higher than our closest competitors for our lifeguards. So again, before you right now is for your considerations to adopt this new salary schedule, which implements that additional $2 per hour per position for the pool. And again, that was PRSA direction. Also for discussion and potential consideration is an additional $2 per hour increase for our other seasonal positions. However, Director Wacholder has some concerns about implementing this phase, which is why you have 2 different motions in front of you to consider. I'm happy to expand on that. So the issue with increasing the seasonal parks position by $2 an hour is because if that is in place, they will make more than their counterpart if it's a full-time. And I understand that the full-time employees have benefits. However, from a morale standpoint, they focus primarily on the hourly wage. Now, the lifeguards, that's understandable. It's an isolated pool. We're trying to keep the pool running. The seasonal employees in the Parks Division, they work alongside bargaining unit members. And I do caution the council on considering the $2 raise for the Parks employees, because it certainly will cause morale issues.
Totally understand.
Not for the season, not for the part-time.
No, keep in mind the part-time positions just got a sizable raise this year. So
What's the part-time hourly?
it's
22,
it's in tab 10.
Yeah, behind tab 10,
Okay,
you've got the red lines that are showing you. I've got 2 columns at the bottom. One is if you were to just raise the pool employees. And then the last column, all in red, is if you just raise all of the part-time at the $2 on the low end as well as the high end.
Okay, thank you.
I would just add further as your finance director that I'm very concerned at this.
Yeah.
I'm concerned at the sustainability of this. We know that we have some small reserves in the pool fund, which is what the PRSA board was contemplating is, well, can we use this to bring the incentive? Kelly has definitely told me that with the $2 potential, that has brought in the extra guards. So if you want to go ahead and approve this, I would recommend no more than the $2. Selby did note the rates of both Wenatchee and Kashmir that are in this packet that I did for you today. And they were about 44% with the existing rates. With this $2 raise, we're going to be close to 60% over those other entities on how much they're paying their employees.
Yeah, did we get a number for Chelan? There,
I did not.
okay,
I
The other
just got
question-
Wenatchee and Kashmir.
okay, yeah.
And if you look at their schedules, if you look at the details that are here, we are running the most robust program.
Right.
We have the most amount of time. Saturdays aren't even happening at Kashmir. There's only like a 4-hour window at Kashmir for their entire pool.
Yeah.
We are running 6 a.m. to, is it 8 p.m. Monday through Friday? And then we're also working on that Saturday schedule as well. So I think we've done as best that we possibly can. This is not just a problem that's happening here in our community or even in Washington. This is nationwide.
I think the PRSA totally understands that, Chantel.
But I
We
want the rest
understand,
of the council to
Yeah,
know
But I
that
would use a
too.
comparable like Lake Chelan as a tourist community, because Kashmir is not a tourist community. I don't think it's a comparable really whatsoever. So the other question I would ask is, what's our revenue? In other words, is our revenue increase, decrease? How much money are we making at the pool? Are we marketing it so that people will use it? Or have they lost interest in the pool? Because the last few years we haven't had. Last year we weren't open on weekends at all. And this year I noticed we're not even open on Sunday. So, I mean, our people, in other words, if we've lost the people who want to come to the pool, tourists come to Leavenworth and say, well, it's not even open on weekends for the last year, and it's not even open on Sunday. It's not even worth going, or with locals. What I was just curious, what has our user season pass and user day pass? How is that reflected in the revenues this year?
Right. And I'll be able to get you that data. Unfortunately, I've got the auditors on my back right at the moment. I did get that request and I will shoot you that 10-year history that you're looking for. One thing I looked at, and this is just quick numbers, is the weekends bring in about 20%
Okay,
of the revenue.
oh, okay.
So
it's a
your
gauge-
weekdays
season
and your
pass.
season passes,
Yeah.
which are mostly locals, we sell very little season passes in the non-PRSA.
Okay,
Very little.
yeah, I would imagine we don't sell a lot of season passes. What I'm curious.
And we've
about-
done the usership
Yeah,
analysis multiple times. We know 75% of our users are the residents. So we do want to ensure that we are providing a good, robust program for the residents, which, you know, we'd all love to have the weekends, but the weekends were happening for the tourists.
I get that. And are we, no, and I appreciate that information. Are we actually marketing it to the tourists? Are we marketing this pool, or is it just there?
No, it's not being marketed.
Okay, that's my curiosity, is that if we did from a business point of view, it's a primary piece of real estate, prime real estate is what I mean. If we marketed it to everyone who rented a hotel room, everyone who went into the river, I mean, do we want it crowded? Do we want to make money off it? That's a big question. No, it doesn't have pools. Well, but are they as nice as ours? And
Well, in pre-COVID, we were at capacity.
Right.
On
okay.
weekends, we
We
were
were
at
turning
capacity
people
and we had to turn people
I
away.
had a meeting earlier this morning with someone who is local within the PRSA. She was telling me that she was waiting 2 hours to get into the pool last summer. I don't think we need to be marketing this pool.
Or maybe we just need a bigger.
Well, but it's not happening this year, so.
Oh, I hear you.
What's the, with the $2 increase, what's the rate gonna be per hour?
2240 to 2480.
And that's for lifeguards
For
in
lifeguards.
particular.
Okay.
And Kelly has noted that if we do the increase for the lifeguard, we need to consider the similar for the assistant manager and manager positions. Because otherwise folks it's a morale issue. The decision I think today for you, the tougher decision is whether or not you include the full park seasonals. Or if you just go ahead and proceed with the full employees this evening.
Yeah, I want to thank all the work that's been done on this. I think I think the sticker shock is real. I think it's also super important because the market is the market. And I know I have friends who have teenagers, and the word amongst the teenagers are, don't you dare get a summer job unless it has tips involved. Because if there are tips involved, you're not making less than $30 an hour. Not what I made when I was in high school, but that's the narrative that's out there, and we need to compete with that. So it is what it is.
Kelly, we can put a tip jar out for the.
But that brings up a good point. Are we selling concessions? Is that a profitable thing? Is that
It's
something?
not.
It's never been
Never
profitable.
been. Could it be made profitable?
We've asked that question many times.
That's a
We've tried
PRSA.
different
Marco, we can
scenarios.
talk about that.
Okay, yeah,
We
I'm
have talked
curious.
about PRSA.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
not,
it was-
good for discussion tonight or the whole council.
I guess I struggle, it's a yes and for me, as far as extending it throughout everyone. I mean, when someone else in my department on the admin wing gets a raise, I'd sure like a raise too. But that's kind of not the way the world works in another way. I mean, I guess part of me wants to say, if you would like that raise, you are more than welcome to put in for the part-time lifeguard position, because that's what that pays. I don't know if that's the correct response. But I just don't know if it's financially viable if we provide a raise to one class of employees for valid reasons, then we need to provide raises for everyone else because people's feelings are going to get hurt.
Well, no, that's not what we're talking. We're talking about the parts and part-time.
I know, but we're saying morale. And when I hear morale, I hear people's feelings are getting hurt because someone's making more money.
But we're talking about, this is about parts employees and parts employees working together, that one would be, the part-time would be making more than the full-time. This isn't about the pool.
Right.
The pool's a separate, that's what we're saying.
Right.
We're saying, raise the pool because it's its own thing and it's its own unique area. But don't apply it to all seasonal employees, because then you're putting two people in the same truck potentially. And the part-time is going to be making more than the full-time. That's the morale issue that we would like you to consider avoiding.
Well, and I see another problem. 3 weeks ago, the union was here and took a shot at us. Give us a warning that
They're gonna be back.
I wouldn't give him any ammo. In fact, I'd lock the door and sit outside. So, just my opinion, sorry, but you know, he took a shot at us, a parting shot when he left here. I remember what he said, so I'm not giving him any fuel.
Yeah, but they're still making more money than other cities if they're.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, the part-time employees who are not, it's just a different job.
Yeah, it's within Wenatchee's, the 1574, which by the way is minimum wage in our state.
Yeah.
That is being advertised for both their seasonal parks and their pool.
Right, yeah, so they can go to actually make less.
Did the PRSA discuss just a raise for lifeguards and concession stand workers rather than all pool
Yes.
members? Since that is where our hardship really is with those kind of lower level part-time positions.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Marco, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the idea was to incentivize to incentivize becoming a lifeguard.
Yeah.
Because we are.
Can I chime in for a second too?
Yeah, I was gonna say, she may want to talk to that because the assistant managers and managers are also lifeguards. So.
Yeah.
Yes, that was the point that I was gonna make, is the assistant managers and myself also are lifeguards on the stand. So, and we also want to boost our swimming lesson program. So we would like to hit the swim lesson instructors as well. That's brought in applications there. Clint, I was just talking to your daughter actually, before this meeting. She was on her way out of the pool and talking about maybe putting in an application as a swim lesson instructor. So we are generating applications there, which is pretty cool. But I think
PRSA is throwing money at a problem, and the problem is that we have had limited hours and we're competing with jobs downtown. And when hotels advertise for $17 or $18 an hour, people laugh in their face because they can make so much more money downtown as a entry-level employee. So what Clint said is real. We're in this really unique bubble where young people have opportunities to make $25, $30 an hour. So we're competing with that, which sets us apart from other municipalities. Also, don't forget this, but this is a significant piece of the puzzle. We want to build a new pool. And in order for us to build a new pool, we need community support. And if this pool continues to operate the way that it has, we can kiss that dream of a new pool goodbye. And we might kiss this pool's future goodbye too, because we're gonna have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in it in a few years to keep it up.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of unique factors here. We're throwing money at this because it is essential to the future of our pool. If we don't operate, we're going to lose the community support that we have. And if we lose any more community support, we're not gonna have a pool.
I fully agree with you.
So it is a unique scenario. It doesn't feel great to throw money at the problem, but quite frankly, if we don't, we won't have a season and we won't have community support.
So the question comes down though to, and it's not like the $2 have done it though. We've got,
I think it's
having
helping.
a full schedule for the Monday to Friday.
Yeah, I think it's helping.
And we're getting a Saturday, a shift on Saturday, so
Got no Sundays.
Well, we can work
most
on that.
schools don't, so
We're making progress. We're heading in the right direction.
Those don't have a Sunday open?
we're in a unique situation of getting the hours that we've got. You start looking at what schools are doing. We're trying to tell you, there's a national
Wenatchee and Kashmir, both in here, are closed on Sunday.
Sunday.
I get that. I'm
We're
asking
heading in the
about
right direction.
comparable places like Lake Chelan, that's a tourist place. Wenatchee and Cashmere are not tourist oriented. They don't get 2.5 million visitors a year. Chelan even.
Chelan doesn't have a state.
Chelan doesn't have, well, they're not, no, oh, they have a lake.
Sorry.
Yeah.
With no lifeguard.
They charge.
They have the big water park.
Yeah. Well, that's open all weekend, sure.
And that
Well,
is.
they're gonna have an indoor, right? But it's a private rec.
Tom's Parks people can apply to work at the pool.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which,
I would like to also point out that Sundays are something I'm still trying to work towards. I'm dealing with, we have several employees that can't work because of religious reasons, several that have other jobs, but I am still actively trying to get that Sunday shift if possible.
Thank you, Kelly.
So pre-2005, this pool was constant.
Monday,
Right, Monday,
Yeah.
no, right.
makes sense.
They close early on Sunday. No, not Sunday. They close.
I would like to make a motion.
Okay.
Leavenworth City Council moves to adopt ordinance 1674, authorizing a 2-hour increase for pool employees only, retroactive to May 1st, 2023.
Second.
Okay, I heard Zeke, I heard somebody else, but I could hear Zeke's voice loudest. And moved by Ann, seconded by Zeke. Any other discussion? All in favor, let me see your hands. Okay, and one abstention, I assume.
I don't have a choice.
Yeah. Well, some people say you do, but
I work at the pool.
I know. All right, it was 6 and 1 abstention. All right, next professional services agreement with Pratik.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is the professional services agreement with Pratik that we have for the Ski Hill Drive Sidewalk Improvement Project. This is the supplemental number 3 that's in front of you. And I did just want to provide a little bit of background that I forgot to include in the write-up, but supplemental number 1 and 2 were only contract extensions for time. And so ultimately, the original agreement was for design services. This supplemental number 3 is the only supplement that actually includes additional scope and cost. And this is for 2 components. One are additional design components that we added on to the project during the design phase. This includes water service replacement, which is very timely with Tracy's presentation earlier today. So we went ahead and added the replacement of all water services that are crossing under our new sidewalk as part of this project, just to be proactive and replace those while we're already in the area. And then some other minor modifications for striping and signage that you're aware of. And then we also had the cultural resources investigation that was added on during design. That was something that wasn't accounted for originally. And then finally, we included MEF documentation, which is maximum extent feasible. This is part of the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act requirements. And so this is more formality, but really this is us forward thinking and knowing that Ski Hill is a classified route, we have the potential to get federal funding for that street. So in doing this MEF documentation for the ADA ramps that we're constructing, ultimately what this means is there's a few ramps along the corridor that won't be able to make ADA requirements just because the existing slope of the street. And so therefore, if you write a MEF documentation and have it on file, when we go and apply for federal funding for this street, we don't have to reconstruct those ramps. We have the documentation in hand to say we've done our due diligence and we've done our best to make these ramps ADA compliant. So that's a lot of information, but ultimately that's a little bit of a summary on the additional design requirements or the additional design items that were added as part of this supplement. The second half of that is the services during construction. So Smith Excavation is starting this work later this month or the beginning of July. And so this is the contract for Critique to oversee the construction, provide all the coordination and correspondence with the contractor, documentation, and all of the other elements that go along with the construction phase. So they'll just be acting as our representative on that project. The total of this supplemental agreement is for $66,947. So this is before you tonight, asking for your approval of the supplemental agreement.
So is the PD work that's going on now related to this on the street?
They are relocating one guy wire that needs to.
Say they were out there. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that they had actually done that yet. And they had a couple poles that need to be relocated.
Well, that's what I wondered because it was all in that stretch there.
Yep.
So, yeah.
They've been replacing a lot of residential poles in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, but this was just right along that corridor where we're doing the sidewalk.
Andy, may I go out of my lane on this street project?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'm gonna step out of my lane on this street project. You know those yellow things on the ramps?
Yes.
I got yellow things.
Can we get away from those?
No, those requirements, so those are actually.
No, I know their purpose, but they get torn up.
I was
everywhere.
gonna say,
Yeah,
they need
so-
to be anchored or cut down or.
Countersuns.
Countersunk, yes,
Yeah, so there's,
so that the plows don't take them out.
Yeah.
I guess I'll answer your first question.
Sure.
No, we can't get away from
Okay.
that. That is a requirement for someone that's visually impaired. That way they can see where the ramp is.
Yeah.
And when they're crossing the street, they target that location. We are trying to address the issue. So a lot of our truncated domes, the yellow things,
That's
are
what those are called.
they're fiberglass.
Uh,
And so actually Tom had this great idea to pursue cast iron truncated domes. So that's something we included in that project.
Cool.
The idea being obviously that they're more sturdy. And then on top of that.
You're gonna mess up some plow blades, that's for sure.
And then there are a couple locations where we aren't able to, or at least we're being told by the contractor at this point, we're not able to use cast iron. Just because it's in tight areas, and in order to meet ADA requirements, you have to cut the domes in order for them to be within a certain distance of that curb. So in those locations, we're going to make sure that the fiberglass domes are like cured with the concrete versus being epoxied on after.
Okay.
I know that's way out of my lane.
No, ask it. Have the answer.
I saw those get ripped up like the first year they put in.
Yeah.
I second your frustration.
Yeah, everybody's frustrated.
So do
with
you
it,
have
but
a
you got-
backup obstacles?
Maybe it's shop.
No, I can't, no.
Well, we know how good Artie does with fiberglass.
Yeah.
Right. Just put him to work. Sure.
I also have the yellow things. But I wanted to ask the question on page 4, task 11, cultural resources service.
Yeah.
And having tribal consultation, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so this was an executive order of the governor, and so this is a state funded project. This is funded by the Transportation Improvement Board. So any project that receives state funding has to go through, and it's Executive Order 2102, I believe. And that means that you pursue a cultural resource investigation. So you submit that to DHP, what was that, Department of Historical Preservation. For their review, and then also send it over to the tribes for their opportunity to comment on the project. And that was something that, to be honest, was overlooked in the original scope. So that's why it was added on, because it's a requirement for our funding.
Is that because there's property in the city limits? No.
No, it's for
It's just
any
any
state funded project. No
Any,
matter what.
okay, no matter what. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
But basically, Critique is handling a lot of paperwork stuff, right? Then every building is placed and they're just kind of managing the regulation that has to get checked off. That kind of what their main focus is.
So they're providing all design services, or that's our goal here. So
Okay.
I would say that that's included as part of the design. It's a necessary step in order to receive TID approval to even go out to bid for this project. So it is paperwork, but it's a necessary step of the design.
Yeah, critical stuff.
Critical, absolutely.
All right.
And it's not a big chunk of this, so.
Is there a high probability that this cost will ultimately be covered? A grant, is there a?
Oh.
High probability that
That's
this
up to you.
No, it'll be repaid basically, because, I mean, obviously, we're gonna, if approved, we're gonna front this cost, but what is the probability of us getting repayment?
Yeah, so we received an additional $50,000 from TIB in the last few weeks. It was since the last council meeting. And so that will also go towards this cost as well.
Yeah, you'll be seeing me increase the revenue side when I bring the increase the expense side.
And I know Lil just asked a question. So the motion, the dollar amount in there, just so it's clear, is updating the not to exceed of the existing professional services agreement. Just so it's clear to everyone. The Leavenworth City Council moves to approve and authorize the mayor to execute supplemental agreement number 3 associated with the Petite Inc. September 2022 Ski Hill Drive sidewalk improvements professional services agreement, updating the not to exceed amount to $121,626.
Second.
Sharon wanted to get something. She wanted. Any other questions? All those in favor, let me see your hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Action item 12. Tom.
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, good evening, council members, community members. This is the actual action item this evening before you, associated with the wider developer extension agreement for the Strasse stormwater improvements. Again, I think Councilor Lunger, you brought up a very good point about the amount that the city is fronting and how, discussing and asking about getting that cost covered by developers. And I put some thought into that in between the meetings. I believe we were pursuing the Hampton. We were going to basically take care of the Hampton project. I believe the lion's share of the 55,000 would have just went to engineering services only, not construction. I think Gino gave us a preliminary cost estimate of $150K to put an infiltration gallery in Ward Strasse. So this is definitely money ahead and also has better benefit. But again, nonetheless, thank you for the question. With that being said, I'm happy to entertain any further questions on this topic.
So if we vote no, then we could technically force them to pay by saying you pay it on the farmers.
Well, it's already it's in motion, like so the Wideners, they own, or it's either Mahler Development or Wideners, they own the property to construct the outfall on. So they, if this is voted down, they would just proceed with a 12-inch out.
Right.
Exactly.
They would get what they need. We wouldn't get what we need, and we would be spending a lot more. No, not for Hampton. This is Hampton we have to fix because that was our mistake.
So this is less about Widener, other than this is an agreement on the Widener property that they're purchasing in order for the outfall to be placed there. But this ultimately is fixing, this is fixing the Hampton.
This is fixing our Hampton plus a bunch of others. We'll get to ride that, but it's a cheaper fix for our Hampton problem than we would have otherwise.
Yeah, because we're the Hampton problem.
It was our problem. It was our mistake. So
So we undersized it.
We approved it.
we approved it with
It's only a
undersized.
2-year storm event.
It was an engineering error.
Yeah. There's a contractor engineer.
And none of us were here. So,
Yes.
I was here.
okay. Blame the finance. guy.
Here we go.
Okay.
Leavenworth City Council moves to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the Widener Developer Extension Agreement between the city of Leavenworth and Vilcoman Village Apartments LLC, an amount not to exceed $55,000.
Second. Moved by Clint, seconded by Jason. Any other questions? All in favor, let me see your hands. Unanimous.
Thank you. And once again, I just want to thank Willis for the help on this.
It was nice to get it done.
13, interlocal agreement with Chelan County. We made Mike wait around, we didn't want to put it at the beginning because we want you to have to sit through this.
Oh, he's just billing all his grants right now. so.
Just slices the pizza 3 hours.
How many cookies?
Tom, you want to start?
Yeah, thank you again, Mayor. Again, we have Mike Caputo with us. We have Chelan County Natural Resources Department Director here with us this evening to kind of weigh in on the things that I may not have great amount of information on, I will say, water system planning related to water rights and the high school strategy and high school work group. I've been with the city now just about 2 years. Every time I talk about this stuff, I learn more. So it's a lot there. But the point with this interlocal agreement that's before you this evening, council, is associated with water planning efforts that are tied to the ISO strategy, in particular with water rights. So in terms of background, the city entered into an interlocal agreement with Chelan County in 2014. And the intent of that interlocal agreement was to stipulate and line out basically how water rights were going to be shared between Chelan County and the city associated with the Wenatchee Reserve Program. And out of that program, the city received 1.074 CFS of additional water rights. That equates to about 777 acre feet per year. So that was a significant amount of water rights the city received during that program. In terms of ERUs, which we were discussing this earlier, it's about 3,500 ERUs of instantaneous water rights. So again, significant. So, and we obtained those rights in 2019. New rights. And since then, additional planning efforts are underway in terms of coordinating the water supply development. And I will say that the county and the city both have a joint interest in acquiring more water rights. One thing that Mike and I were discussing, if you recall, looking at that ultimate build out ERU that was on the previous table in the study session, we don't have water rights to serve ultimate build out. The city is going to continue to grow over time. So it's imperative that we keep forward momentum with acquiring water rights. And so this opportunity, there could be upcoming opportunities through the ISO strategy. One of the ISO strategy the guiding principle is to provide additional water rights to meet municipal and domestic demand. Further, the guiding principle includes an allocation of 1,750 acre feet of water rights to both the county and the city. However, the ISO strategy and the guiding principle doesn't go into specifics on how these water rights are allocated. So this interlocal agreement that's before you this evening will stipulate and basically predetermine how these water rights are allocated. And I'm not going to go through these scenarios in detail, but in both in the write-up and in the interlocal agreement, it basically provides examples. If this 1,750 acre feet of water right become available, how it's divvied up between the Chelan County and the city.
No, finish what you're saying.
Oh, no, that I'm just winding down, and I do want to give Mike an opportunity to weigh in on anything as well. So.
Yeah, I would just say, do you want to ask your question?
It was a question. I have no issue with interlocal. I have a question about something you said, Tom. You said at full build out, we wouldn't have capacity. That's assuming we don't get that 2,700 ERUs.
Oh, right. So you're talking about the city position
The
versus
city's
college.
position.
Right.
One thing I will say, like this build out is based on old data. So this is 2016 data.
Oh, right.
So there's been
We're
some-
revising that. That's right.
Exactly. So this is gonna,
Yeah.
it's gonna increase.
Okay.
And also presumably you'll annex over time and the UGA will grow. So again, we just have to keep forward thinking in terms of securing water rights.
Go ahead.
I would just add to what Tom was saying, part of the effort around the ISO strategy and our participation in the ISO work group, make generational investments in ISO Creek, and so you're seeing those things happen now. The 11th National Fish Hatchery is completed, or almost is completed, the new surface water intake program. Next year, very likely, we'll be implementing the Cascade Works Irrigation Company pump act project. Probably a $7 or $8 million project, probably in 2 years. The 8 Mile Dam would be replaced. That's a multi-million-dollar project. So just to reinforce what Tom was saying about these guiding principle investments, we're looking 50 years out on water supply as well. So the county and the city have a mutual goal on securing water over the time frame. So while we're making these big investments and big changes in ISO Creek, we also want to make sure that we're meeting the domestic and demands as well. So this agreement, this is really built on the partnership that we've had with the city for years, going way back to watershed planning. We're doing cost reimbursement programs, Tom was calling the mentioned program. Now just figuring out a way that the county and the city will
divide up water specific to Icicle Creek. You guys need more water out of Icicle Creek, long-term than county does in rural areas. We happen to need more right now. Our reserve is about 90% exhausted from Icicle Creek, but we need water pretty soon. There are some efforts underfoot in the Icicle strategy to secure water. One is through the rule amendment, amending the Michigan Stream Flow Rule. There's a small quantity of water that is set aside for future growth in the county and the city. And there are some partners on the Icicle strategy who may be able to sell some water to the Icicle work group, and the city and the county may participate in that sale. That's another way that we can secure water to meet those guys. So the MOU in front of you outlines how we divide up that water. It's likely that we're going to get that water over time and not all at once. So it lays out some scenarios about this be sufficient for you if you need it. Well, yes.
So if somebody's selling islands, do you have to be upstream again?
Use has to, generally speaking, there's always an exception. That's why it has to be down. Use has to be down. Downstream.
So we have to force a hatchery to become some.
Yes, I mean, all the growth is going to be downstream. Major.
Right.
Hatcheries.
The major users,
The acre.
yeah, hatchery and the irrigation districts are all big users as well,
Yeah,
so,
the major users, the ice irrigation.
yeah.
It's 52 B.
Yeah, they have about in their portfolio, they have between surface water and groundwater, they have about 50 CFS. Ice irrigation district diverts just short of 120 CFS.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should ask. I mean, in terms of generational investments, I mean, we're working with the irrigation district on that project. That's a $40 million project to build 2 pump stations to service both the icicle system and the Shasta system. We would decommission the Shasta conversion and reduce substantially the icicle diversion.
Lots of irons in the fire, so to speak, and this is just how we're agreeing to kind of divvy those up, which basically in rough layman terms is a 50-50 until we get up to where they're kind of maxed out. And then we'll get the additional beyond that, because we're going to get more of that 1750 eventually.
So this allows these A, B, C, these are just different options. According to this MOU and what this motion would provide for.
Right.
And there's flexibility too, as indicated in that provision C, if there's stipulations with the water right in terms of, for example, if water may come to use in Chelan County, then the city, and then we'll work together to.
But that will eventually get to that ultimate goal of splitting it the way this describes.
So is there a possibility that we would loan them if they needed more for a short time then get it back, or?
That's a good question. I don't know. That sounds like a council.
I don't know if you can loan water out to new development.
You can loan rights, but let's not go there right now.
Setting precedent. No, we don't. Well, I wouldn't suggest.
No.
When do we predict resolution around the 2,700 ERUs with tied up with ecology? I mean, I know it's been a 10-year plus thing.
Question, I'm not gonna say too much, but there'll be an executive session at the next city council.
Okay. I know it's been lingering for a long time.
Yeah, I would say broadly that the icicle work group has been committed to meeting the domestic and municipal goals. And hypothetically, that would address the quantities.
It would address what?
The water needs
Oh,
and
okay.
and resolve the dispute.
The dispute.
Yeah, so presumably, the litigation may become moot because the city would secure water, or not water, through the icicle strategies be long term.
That would be ideal resolution.
That would be the perfect scenario.
Yeah.
And we know what, somebody said something about dream.
Oh,
What?
Tracy, yeah.
Yeah, Tracy, the dreams and, oh, well. I would entertain a motion.
The Leavenworth City Council moves to approve and authorize the mayor to execute the Chelan County, City of Leavenworth interlocal agreement, water supply planning coordination agreement.
Second.
Moved by Ann, seconded by Zeke. Any other questions? All right, all those in favor, let me see your hands. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I can have the certified our commissioners on Monday. I can get this signed version.
Oh,
Okay.
I've got it.
Be someone to email us again. With all our intent.
I'll take care of it tomorrow morning.
Thanks for coming out for 3
Yeah.
hours.
That'd be like a pizza.
Yeah.
You don't usually get props like those rusty pipes, so.
Yeah, the pipes. You gotta get those museum pieces in.
Yeah, we're auctioning those off. Get some pictures.
They're for, yes. They're your parting gift. Pick one, just one. One cookie and one rusty pipe.
Yum, yum. Okay.
Mike,
Let's see my action item 14, amendment number 1 to the public agency participating agreement with WASDOT. Andy.
Yeah, so one more amendment in front of you tonight. As the mayor said, this is amendment number 1 to the public agency participating agreement with WashDOT. This is an additional $88,316 to pave Chumstick Highway. So as you've seen, they've already planed it and done some pavement repair out there, but this is adding that work into their contract for their Leavenworth and Blewett Pass paving project. So this was identified pretty late in the project process with them, but ultimately we found that Chumstick did not have deficient utilities underneath. So we proceeded with adding it into their project to have it planed and paved as part of their project. Just a little bit of history, like we talked about when we added 12th Street into their project, which was the original participating agreement we had with them. It's just a lot cheaper for us to have our streets paved under their contract because of the large quantity that they have, and they already have a contractor moved out here.
They're mobilized.
And they're mobilized, and they're already paving that same intersection.
Yeah.
So just for a little bit more history here too, we are planning and paving, doing pavement repair. And then we're also reconfiguring that intersection a little bit just with striping. So we're adding if you're heading northbound on Chumstick and trying to turn onto Fur, we're adding a small left turn pocket in there. And then we're also adding, if you're on Fur and you're trying to head northbound, head up towards the high school, we're adding a small acceleration lane for traffic, making that motion as well. So that's ultimately how this started. And then once we looked into this a little bit more and realized that this is city right away that we need to maintain and needs to be maintained, we went ahead and added this onto their contract. So again, this is for that total, an additional ask of $88K for this. And I apologize, I made a mistake in the motion. So at the very end of the motion, I meant to include the words in the amount of $88,316.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that makes, but it's in the body.
It's in the body, it's just not in the
Not in the
motion.
motion.
Right. Well, yeah.
What was the first percent, the first amount?
You know, I don't have that off the top of my head, but
Right now, it's 33,000.
33. So this puts it,
Well,
this puts it up to like 105,000 or something like that then,
in that range.
in that range.
I don't know
So
if I-
Chumstick Highway, is that city of Leavenworth, that road up to North Road or?
No, not up to
not
North
up to
Road. It's
North.
actually before the high school entrance. So right now you'll see that there was a county chip seal that started there. So that's called a meat line where they started the
Okay.
chip seal. And we're just going up to that meat line that's been there. It's like I said, it's before the high school entrance even.
Is it past the fire department?
No,
No.
it's on
So-
our side of it.
Okay,
It's not that far up, really.
Yeah, it's just on the other
Little
side of the
ways.
entrance. It's like the BNSF parking lot. You know, vacant lot is right there. It's just on the other side of that. So between Fur and the high school.
Okay. And the parks were used to, that's gonna be the roundabout in that area?
That's where we have the proposed roundabout and ultimately some of this might be touched as part of the roundabout project, but for the most part, the roundabout's gonna be located, at least what we're showing right now. It's gonna be closer to the high school. So a majority of this wouldn't be touched by that project, at least under our current configuration.
Okay, and so people coming out of down First Street towards Chumstick, there'll be a way to swing back into there and come out of there. I guess I thought First Street was gonna disappear.
That's the future project. Right now, this is.
Okay.
This is just some striping changes that we're making to improve safety and have traffic flow a little better. But when they go in and do the roundabout project, these will be changed.
Okay, thanks.
Entertain a motion.
Leavenworth City Council moves to approve and authorize the mayor to execute amendment number 1 to the public agency participating agreement associated with the Washington State Department of Transportation US 2 and US 97 Leavenworth to north of Blewett Pass paving project in the amount of $88,316.
Second.
Moved by Jason, seconded by Tibor. Any other questions?
One thing I do want to point out, which is super cool, DOT actually incorporated Andy stripe design.
Cool.
Yeah, it doesn't walk that plan sheet, but Andy design.
I have some connections there.
Yeah. Oh, watch out. 'Cause we're gonna hire.
Yeah.
No.
No, it's just my husband. I don't need to go work with them.
They're gonna. Yeah. All right. All those in favor, let me see your hands.
Thank you.
Unanimously. Item 15 is bed and breakfast moratorium for 6 months. Somebody want to make a motion, put it on the floor and we can talk?
I will,
Okay,
whatever it was I said before. I make a motion that we
put in place.
put in place the bed and breakfast. Yeah, thank you.
It's to the moratorium.
Maybe you should just say
For
the bed and
permitting of
breakfast moratorium for 6 months. So that the planning commission can get to work.
Complete their order, yeah.
What work are they doing?
They're looking at density bed and breakfast and how many we should have and how we're gonna be differentiating, what their size limits. They're just looking at bed and breakfast all.
And what percent of our overall residential structure with bed and breakfast is?
I don't know.
1%.
It's, yeah, and they're looking at maybe setting a cap of that and setting them by areas. I mean, they're looking at a lot of options. We talked about it with them on the other night. But they're in that process, but the thought being, this will make sure that people don't rush in thinking that there's going to be limits put on and try to get them in before those limits are set. So this gives us time to do that.
Okay.
That's the thinking behind getting it in place. So that motion was made and
I'll second.
seconded by Clint. And people want to talk.
So essentially, Mayor, this is a direction to direct staff to start the process and get with the legal counsel to develop the appropriate ordinance and public hearings that are necessary in order to
To get
implement
this
the
in
moratorium.
process and going, yep.
Can we have a moratorium retroactive to
No,
June 13th? That we can't do that.
no, you have to have public hearings to place a moratorium.
I get that, but public hearings place moratorium retroactive to the day that it was.
I do not believe you can go.
What I read was you do not need a public hearing to put a moratorium on. Just read it today.
I would leave that to answer by legal counsel.
Yeah.
I have some concerns about this. We very specifically directed the planning commission to work on this, and I feel like making the assumption of the worst by putting a mostly unsubstantiated moratorium in place kind of is a cart before the horse sort of thing. when we have directed the planning commission very specifically to work on this. The planning commission discussed this at the joint meeting, but they also, I mean, we have some extensive notes in our previous packet from their previous meeting about this discussion, and they're really working hard on this. But a lot of the information that they're working on is based on the fact that of our total housing stock, we have hardly any B&Bs in our community. And so I'm not seeing the need for this moratorium right now, because if we're going to give them the room to do all of this work, it needs to be based in data. We need to have stats to substantiate something like this, rather than an assumption that's just based in fear that people are going to go rushing into the door. And when we did our very extensive code modification for bed and breakfasts and made the code much more challenging to meet and required conditional use permits and required owner occupancy and all of that in 2017, we didn't have any rush when those changes were made. Nobody rushed in before the code came into adoption. It was, over a year's worth of work with the planning commission leading up to the city council, and we didn't have a whole bunch of rushes in for people trying to establish and not have to be owner occupied.
I understand what you're saying. I guess my concern comes with the fact that concern was coming from the planning commissioners themselves at that meeting. I mean, I understand what you're saying about this. Feels like we're not trusting the commissioners to do their work. What I was hearing from the commissioners were they were hesitant to begin this work because by beginning the work, word on the street would be you better get your application in now because the doors are closing. That's where their hesitation to even start this work was coming from. And I guess where I'm coming from is if that's their hesitation, then we're not closing the door. We're doing a pause so that they can continue that work without fear that the tidal wave is coming in.
But that's not should be your concern. That's our concern.
And is there an actual?
But there isn't yet, but I feel like I guess my concern with that is that, a number of years ago when we were talking about STRs in the community and whether or not to ban them, someone could have said, well, we don't see too many short-term rentals now in the community. Why do we need this? We're not being reactive, we're being proactive.
Reason I voted no is because of the lack of proper procedures. It needs to go to legal. It needs to go get information from planning commission and see where they're at. Because just go sign up and say, we want to ban it for 6 months. We don't know what they're planning. Proper procedure here is to talk to legal, get a motion that's correct and on agenda, then see if it passes. But tonight, this thing's a must. It really.
I'm fine with not voting in a moratorium tonight, but I would like to get the ball rolling so that Tom could come back to us in 2 weeks and talk to us about it.
That proper procedure, and the motion is correct, and that everything that we don't make a mistake here, because this will get out tomorrow, and then you'll have a run. What? Maybe nothing.
How long has bed and breakfast been around?
Since the 80s.
And so we still only have less than 1%.
What's changed since the 80s?
Well, the housing has changed.
Dramatically, we didn't have a housing shortage in the 80s.
Right, but I still think we're looking at a mad rush. I mean, is there an actual tidal wave? It's in the 80s.
It doesn't have to be a tidal wave, but it is a wave.
But I would say.
If you look at Maggie's information here, there just a few years back, there was like 5 or 6. Okay, approved and operating right now, there's 16. Preliminary approval, there's 3. Applied, there's 3. And so it is ramping up. And I'd like to see, I think that a moratorium will kind of put this on hold, so to speak, and the planning commission. Some of this came from the planning commission for me to want to get this done now. They are noticing that.
So
I don't think you guys were at the planning commission meeting, and we were.
I was there. What's the problem
there
with
too.
more bed and breakfasts? I mean, that's what Troy said when he was in Germany. There was tons of bread and breakfast.
We're not in Germany.
It's not a problem with more bed and breakfast. I guess the problem is with bed and breakfast is when that bed and breakfast could be an ADUs, that could be long-term rental. When we expended 6 figures to secure 30 residences here in town. And we're talking about a number of those that could be monthly rentals that could go to a teacher or a nurse that instead are going to be owner occupied short-term rentals. I hesitate. I mean, if we don't really care, why did we even expend that money to go to Mend anyway? Because clearly it's not a priority for us.
But if you remember, Kenny Renderson, so 2 of his teachers have ADUs and renting them as STRs, sort of going down that road, so that they can stay here and teach here. So it's a balancing act.
We're not talking about ADUs, we're talking about bed and breakfast.
I'm sorry, I was confusing the issue. I was saying when there are people that are building ADUs that could be a monthly rental, and instead they're using it as an end around to turn it into a short-term rental here in town. That wasn't what I wanted those AD, and it's not what I voted to allow those ADU usage. That's not what I envisioned that for. I didn't envision it to be an end around.
I didn't either. I don't know if anybody did.
Let me say a potential premise here that first off, 5 years ago, there wasn't a single bed and breakfast in my neighborhood. Now there's 5. Okay. Now Ave Street is denser than any other place. So it doesn't mean like every neighborhood's like that. But things are not what they were in 2016. This is 2023, and money's out there for the money's there to be made. So we don't need to do it tonight, but I certainly believe we need to put it in motion if there's a moratorium, because it needs to be looked at seriously with legal. So we do it right. But we're headed for a place. You kind of assume like, oh, there's only 20. So so far, but I'm telling you that I think the act is an appropriate action put into play, that we have a look at it and see if we go that way, because it's moving at a much higher place than it was before. And if you can't, you're going to give up housing stock with bed and breakfast. They're never going to come back to housing stock. Okay, they're not going to be long-term rentals. They're going to stay bed and breakfast. And if you want to protect the community, you don't allow a free form of bed and breakfast spread throughout the whole community.
So just, one question is, how many of these are ADUs versus, because some of these are in their home.
Yeah.
Their rooms in their homes. So I don't know if this is broken down into how many of those, because those most likely wouldn't get another rental. It's the ADUs that are.
And I guess my larger concern was hearing the commissioners talk during that meeting. I heard hesitancy on their part to even broach the subject because they felt like they were going to initiate
a mad rush,
a wave and a rush.
Right.
And they were worried that they were creating the conditions that they were hoping to avoid.
Yeah.
And for me, entering into this discussion and at least broaching the discussion and asking Tom to do the due diligence, and let's talk about a timeline and what that would look like for us to enact this, so we could give the planning commission the time and space to do their work without worrying that there are unintended consequences from those efforts. That's what started to make me think about this.
So how about we modify this, Sharon, if you would be willing to just say, we will have a motion to refer this process to legal counsel to start that, to bring something back ASAP.
That doesn't really need to be a motion, it can just be a direction.
Well, then just give us a direction to do that versus.
Yeah, I pulled that motion back. Mayor's just having.
Right.
I think that's better. It's not perfect.
Maybe it wouldn't be voted down.
Well,
There's nine since last year. 9 DMEs added.
You know, we built 6 hotels.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
that's about the problem.
Hotels are not in the community. No, they're not. Hotels are not in our residential community.
residential, they're not residential. We're trying to,
all the difference in the world.
and it's a good goal to protect the residential. I think that, I mean, one thing, and I brought that up at the one advantage of a B and B is you do get a resident. I, in a lot of ways, would rather have a B and B than an empty home next to me.
We have
That's a,
35.
and we've got, right, we're getting close to 40% of those that are second homes. We can't do anything about those. But I'd rather have if my neighbor would turn into a B and B instead of an empty home that I see them 6 times a year.
I'll agree with you there, Carl, and I want to make a point about being proactive about affordable housing and housing stock. We have parking lot 1 and 2. We were given an option. We should just run with that, not with that. But we could develop that and let them manage it. And suddenly we'd have a bunch of housing stock that we created. And be proactive about it instead of having to invest in somebody else.
I don't think we're gonna get into housing development.
No, I'm just saying that that's the ultimate goal, to improve affordable housing. I don't think being proactive about bed and breakfast and who's gonna buy what and forcing private landowners to say, this is what you can and can't do with your property, like Jason's doing. If I'm gonna build an ADU and build a bed and breakfast, I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna make money off my property and nobody's gonna stop me.
Well, that's a great
Unless-
attitude.
Unless you have a moratorium.
Yeah.
And you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to considering a moratorium in the future. I just have some misgivings with our conversation tonight, some of which Tibor has brought up tonight, but also I just don't think that we have the data to make a good decision. It feels like a very emotionally driven conversation right now, and I can get behind the potential of instilling a moratorium if I see the data that supports it. And based on the notes for planning commission meetings with these conversations and the statistics that Lilith has provided us, I don't see an issue that would rise to the level of a moratorium right now. But I'm totally open to continuing that conversation, having some guidance from our legal counsel and making a very good data-driven decision as council.
And I will say, just as Sharon has noted and Clint and Tibor, you were there too. I mean, it was raised by them. So I think they didn't do themselves any favor if they didn't want this hiking. Because they did raise the issue that their concern was that the perception was, you better get it in now, you better rush up, you better, right? And they were operating from place. But I'm just saying that raised that emotional
Well, and
level.
just by bringing it up, it could be a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it may not be the reality. And I don't think that we need to be making these types of really big decisions on assumptions. Like, show me the information and let's make a decision that way.
Well, for some, it's big enough, for others, it's not.
But let's look at how many units we have in our housing stock in the city limits, and let's make a comparison of how many of those are ADUs as B&Bs, how many of those are ultimately B&Bs, within our entire housing stock. Yeah, and let's have that conversation, but we haven't had that conversation yet.
I guess my question with that process is, and I'm a fan, as big a fan of process as anyone, but if you went back a number of years and we used that criteria on the STR conversation within the residential area, would we have even banned that because the data didn't support? There were no STRs in the downtown in the residential area. So why do we need a ban?
There's a lot of STRs in our downtown commercial.
No, I mean STRs in the residential area.
We've never allowed STRs in the residential. No, never once. They have been regulated since the 80s. It's always been B and B.
Okay.
So STRs have never been.
Let me pose a question to you, Sharon. Jason's ADU. It didn't exist until he built it. And he built it under the guise that he was going to make it a B&B. Did he take away housing stock?
No, because it was never going to be housing stock in the first place.
So to have that part of this, that we're taking away housing stock, is wrong. Okay, and I'll give you another example. I have a house on Betsy Street. 4-acre lot. I could build another house. Right now, that house is sitting empty. I may leave it sit empty for a year. Because I don't know what I'm gonna do with it.
Yeah.
Am I taking away housing stock? Am I not? What am I doing that's wrong if I decide not to put anybody in?
We've got less than 24 B&Bs within the entire city limits, but we have 40% of our housing stock sitting empty.
Right.
As second homes. That's a bigger problem.
That is a
Well,
bigger
we
problem.
don't want to forget the fact that B and Bs, like Zeke said, because he doesn't really have, in a way, a neighborhood. And the B and Bs and the even the ADUs, well, the reason I thought I heard Lilith say a while back about ADUs was that they were hoping when they opened the door, they were hoping that they would become affordable rents, and that I know of, none have.
I think there are some rented. Take a little left turn here, but I think the bigger problem, is gonna be these 300 units are gonna build. And congestion.
Could be too, but there's nothing we can do about that.
Did we put a moratorium on this? No, we welcomed them.
I didn't welcome them, so I don't know who the we is.
Welcome, the council was it? The council gave them approved the project.
Well, it's zoned multi-family, it's not a.
Legal. It's
legal.
But it's legal just like it's a breakfast. Just like a bed and breakfast. And I'm not,
We still could look
I'm
at
just
it,
saying-
we could still try to get 10% of those.
I know, but I'm saying do this the correct inclusion.
I would say that Anne's got a good point as far as the process. I think that making a decision tonight to start a moratorium is probably not the most, yeah, you gotta have a process, back up what you've got going. And be honest, even though I would myself be fine with a moratorium, I would say it's gotta be more data driven than what it is right now. But I would say within a month, we should put a limit to when we come back and get it done. So it's just out there.
We can take it and find out the legal process to go through and begin that process, so.
But if the end game is to increase housing stock and affordable housing, we have so many better avenues than to worry about better practice.
I would disagree. I think that that's one of the tools you got. I'm not gonna do anything about second homes right now. That is out of our reach. So, but bed and breakfasts are in our reach, and that is something we can address and see what we can do. But you can't force people to do something about their private land. Like Jason can't tell them to build an ADU. You can have a density cap. Sure, the county did it. We can do it. Well, they have a density cap on SDRs.
Right.
Well,
Not bed and breakfast.
well, no, but
That's what the planning commission is working on right now.
I know, I get that, and I don't see a problem with that, I mean, but you can't just leave it like under 1%, I mean, I don't think there's a threat, and I don't really see the way it makes sense, but if we truly want to increase housing stock in Leavenworth, there's so many more effective, there's so much more low hanging and more effective.
Right.
Low-hanging fruit.
Like inclusionary.
I think this is low hanging.
Like,
Right.
inclusionary.
How about volume? Right.
I agree, inclusionary zoning, let's pass that tonight.
Right, if we had a proposal in front of us,
I would just like accessory dwelling units to be the accessory rental units.
or long-term, hopefully that means a good discussion.
Or accessory short-term rental.
That's
Let's say. Got a big snappy saying, there. Sorry about that.
Well, and I know that the planning commission has been talking about that too.
Right.
So
Finally.
we're gonna reword this.
Point of order, you still have a motion on the table.
Right, table it and go.
No,
No,
we should get rid of it
Hold that.
if Sharon's okay with that. Otherwise, we can.
if Sharon and Clint want to keep, we can put it to a vote.
Well, Sharon's the one that, I know I seconded it, but I can't rescind it.
You could withdraw your second.
I'm gonna withdraw my second.
Okay, Sharon, can you get another second?
I do what?
Can you get somebody else to second it? Because Clint's withdrawing his second.
Is there somebody else who will second it?
I think what we'll do is we'll go talk to legal, see what it would take to bring it in a proper form. And take it from there.
Probably wouldn't be
That's all you need.
available.
You don't need to direct it to us because.
Right. Right. It'll probably take,
I know. We'll just keep going.
yeah,
I'll be
right.
here 3 months from now, same thing. I feel like it's gonna be honest with my feelings.
Yep,
I've seen nothing happening on this and it's been months.
okay. Any reports? Sharon,
Oh, God,
you put it all away.
I'm going to not be upset.
Okay.
I'm going to read my report. And I'm gonna make it an hour long.
Passive aggressive.
No.
Sharon, that's the best.
Would you like the finance report? You could read it.
I went to the design review board where the Hampton Inn building, new building was shown, and that was interesting. I won't comment further on that though. The 25th, out at the Snowy Owl, with the Chumstick Wildflowers group. Presenting that, and Carl already made a comment about, which was one of the things that I thought very interesting too, was that big forest fire goes through and there's this house standing not touched at all because they cleared all that within 100 square feet or something around their house and done all the due diligence they did there. I went to a museum meeting also that day, no report. Last day for bagging lunches for our kids since school is out now was on the 7th. But note that lunches will be passed out at Pashassan Dryden Elementary School on Monday and Wednesdays between 11 a.m. and noon for the summer. So the kids still have access to getting those lunches. As we kind of already said, the joint council PC meeting, Clint was on Zoom, and then Tibor and I were in the room, so it wasn't quite a joint meeting. And they did, which stirred me up with the B&Bs when they started talking about the number of them and all the rest of that information. I went to the city yard sale at Osborne and bought a couple of items. And on the 8th and then on the 9th, there was the 10 a.m. hearing examiner for Jordan McDevitt at the Alpine Glow property via Zoom. And so that was interesting to hear the comments that folks had. On the 10th, which was last Saturday, I had signed up with Snowy Owl to have my house, have someone come and go through the yard and everything and maybe make some comments about ways that I could fix my house up. And the worst one was I have metal roofs and they're the ones that are like this. So on the garage and on the house. And so the suggestion is that those are plugged so embers can't get in there.
You mean firelights?
Yeah, yeah. And what young man was really nice. Young fireman. On Wednesday, this Wednesday, tomorrow night, actually at the Fest Hall, the Historical Society is putting on David Severn's service for him. And that's at the Fest Hall tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. And that's it.
Thank you. Thanks.
I attended the planning meeting as Sharon did, and it was a good conversation. The joint meeting. Won't belabor that. We've talked about it a ton. That concludes my report. Short and sweet.
Jason.
I had a work commitment during the PC joint council meeting and I forgot it. Not mutually exclusive. I had an excuse for this, but I didn't even let anybody know. So, yeah, I was just off my radar. Sorry about that. And I can't think of anything else city related I've been doing the last couple weeks. So.
And
The Link Transit Board has finally hired a new CEO. Nick Covey, who is the chief of staff currently at Link Transit, will be the new CEO and he
Was the
starts
finance
July
director.
1st. Yeah, he used to be the finance director and now he's the chief of staff, and he's gonna be a really great CEO. He's got a lot of institutional knowledge. He's basically the CEO's right-hand man right now, and so there's going to be very little actual transition period. So it's gonna be great for Link Transit. I also attended our econ committee meeting where we went over our Leavenworth Fund applications and amended them for our new funding season for this summer. And that went really great with our committee. We made a lot of really great changes for efficiency and appropriateness with various different applicants and their applicability for the funding. So I think we're gonna have a really good funding season this year.
See,
Okay. I along with Sharon and Carl attended the Wildfire Coalition presentation at Snowy Owl. It was really well done. Wish there were more people, but anyways, excellent. Rick Stratton is just a phenomenal fire strategist, starts explaining wind patterns, and humidity and history, fuel sources. So he did a phenomenal job. He did it about 3 years ago for the council. And did it again, and it was just top notch. Along with how to protect your home. That was sometime a couple weeks ago. On the 31st, along with Clint and Jason, attended a presentation by Cascade seniors in the Commons with presented projects. And we were evaluators, so we rated them on their presentation. They talked about a wide diverse of topics from food trucks, salmon recovery, actually how to handle the traffic at First Street and Chumstick. Lots of good, and they did, and this is like, I think this is the first year back from COVID, so this is a big deal. These kids really, I think they were freshmen or sophomores when that did. So anyway, we were there, had some other community members there, county commissioner was there. So it was a phenomenal presentation, lots of hard work from those kids, projects, big boards, data, whole thing. I was really glad to participate that. Then the last thing I did was there was on June 2nd, in front of the city hall, there was a recognition of the gun violence in the country. It's called Orange Day, but it was just in recognition of so we had a vigil, and then we were out on a highway with signs and just bringing awareness about what's happening in the country, and it was well attended and well worth the time. So that's in my report.
How about that kid? That's great. I also had a work commitment during the joint meeting with the planning commission. However, I did pass my exam as the Cascadia prescribed burn council. Now I'm a burn manager. In other words, I'm a legal arsonist. So I have a burn.
we heard a lot about you guys.
Right. So I have read a burn plan, and you told your mind. We'll do some prescribed burning on private lands for the DNR and burn piles and those kinds of things. So it's a really great way to restore the forest and bring it back to healthy, bring a fire regime back to the area. On June 10th, I attended the Cascade High School graduation. My son graduated, and some really impressive people going on in the world to create positive change. So that was, I think that's the end of my report.
Very right.
So people attend the econ meeting, so. Exactly as Ann described.
Yeah.
I did attend the PC meeting, so. One of the things that came out of it, that they had asked if there was anything we could get from them that was not. So going off with Chantel, that's when she gives us a cover on. Bring a work to the change control units. Just a short page that says, how'd you get to that? And is there a second option? Did you have? What was the process to get to this change? So they're going to do that. So when it comes to us, they'll have a cover letter. They as a group got to that decision on how, if there was a close second. So we should see those. Good idea.
Can I squeak in one quick thing?
All right.
Planning commission meeting, you were smart to be on Zoom. I don't know if you got caught in this, but when I left, they had just put all that pavement thing all along this.
Yes, out here.
And we sat for 1 hour.
Oh.
Pardon me?
Carl moved.
I moved the barrier and just rolled out.
You take a right.
When they, in between, they had gone by with their pilot car and they hadn't started back the other direction, so it was clear.
That's what those grooves are in the.
Yeah.
No, they wouldn't, there would have been, no, we would have done really quietly, but they wouldn't. Yeah.
I saw him go down.
Mayor's car.
There's a line of cars behind me from the meeting. 1 hour. She said it'll be about 20 minutes.
I mean, I miss everyone.
Maggie said it was 40, but who's battling over 20 minutes now?
I was 2 minutes. Anyway, I don't have much of a report. Selby and I are going to Association of Washington Cities State Convention this next week, so. And I will be running for the representative from our area, so.
Good.
Yeah, on their board. But yeah, that's Tuesday through Friday next week. We'll be.
Where's that?
In Spokane. And that's my report.
All right, I've got a few things. On June 1, I attended the ribbon cutting and grand opening of the Adventure Park. Christine and I got to try all the things. 3 rides in the Alpine coaster, the climbing wall, the gemstone slope.
That's a conflict of interest. It's just a $60 gift.
And the bungee
Yeah.
trampoline. Oh, hundreds of people were there.
And you do it blindfolded?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
But I think I was subject of a noise complaint because the subsequent day I received the first noise complaint about the adventure park
Yeah.
from a resident on Shoals Street. And you all have that complaint. So I asked him to file, he called me, asked him to put it on, to fill out the web complaint form. And community development will be keeping any complaints related to the adventure park in a file. Yes, the EDC met on June 5th. Some of the changes that we made were to the general fund grant, including restricting the use of taxpayer dollars to the city limits, reducing maximum awards from 10K to 5K, and requiring at least a 50% match and allowing only one application per applicant. The changes were necessary because last round we had $165,000 in requests and only $50,000 in funding. Changes to the lodging tax grants were made, were mainly to define a new Leavenworth Fund area that is roughly defined by Eagle Creek Road to the north, to Sleeping Lady to the south, to the Shaston Bridge to the east, to the Alps on Highway 2 to the west. And with the $50,000 rollover and unused grant funds for the last round, there will be $175,000 available in the lodging tax dollars to support new programs and events for the visitors of Leavenworth that will bring visitors to Leavenworth. Applications will be made available by July 1 and due August 31st. On June 8th, last Thursday, I met Mary Monahan from the Department of Ecology to review their brownfields grants and funding. We're hoping that they could help with the asbestos abatement at the Osborne School. They have a slush fund.
Cool.
They also have integrated planning grants available up to $200,000. And she's very hopeful that we'd be able to get that to use for investigation of car wash property should we get it under contract by then. And those grant applications are due in July and awarded in August. And thank you, Jason, for that introduction. That was very valuable and much appreciated.
Way to go, Jason.
Yesterday, the mayor and I met with the Port Commissioner, J.C. Baldwin. She wanted to meet because she can't attend when the port will be coming to a study session later on this summer. We had a fruitful discussion and they're very interested in helping with parking and other economic development efforts. Tomorrow, I will attend a focus group for the proposed East Wenatchee Regional Sports Complex. And then Mayor and I are also attending a mock chumpstick wildfire tabletop exercise on Thursday put on by the Forest Service. And I will be out next week attending Washington City's annual conference in Spokane. On a personal note, I've been spending all of my free time whitewater kayaking on the Wenatchee River. And the flay run is pretty much done. It's down to like $4,000. There's not very much.
It's not as much.
Be on an icicle.
So I'll be on the icicle and then ton water by the end of the summer. I'm going to give a little updates. The building official position has been posted. First review will be June 30th. The Leavenworth Meadows will start bringing equipment to the site. Now, they don't have a site. What do we call it? A site development permit yet. But they will be placing some construction fencing and removing vegetation and some debris as early as next week. And the Alpenglow 3 plat hearing was on Friday. The city requested the record to be reopened to provide more information regarding the traffic impact analysis. The hearing examiner granted the request. Once information is provided, the hearing examiner will set a date to close the record and give the public an opportunity to comment on the new evidence. Notice to people on the party record will be sent out in the next few days. And we will be posting internally for the assistant planner code compliance position this week.
All right, Chantel.
Well, let me start with the reminder on your agenda, Mayor's Annual Breakfast, 8/1/2023. Please mark your calendars. We did confirm that is Crystal's,
Yes.
8 to 9:30 this year.
Yes.
So a little later, we normally do it at 7, but we're gonna up that to 8. I did attend the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association Conference in Portland, at your last council meeting, you missed me, that's where I was, had a.
Did we
really
miss
good
you?
time.
Oh.
Oh, well, you might not have missed me, but I had a really good time though, and it was just phenomenal. You know, we go to our local conferences and we get anywhere between 800 and 900 attendees, and this conference had over 6,000.
Wow.
So I literally every day looked for someone I knew. I did not find anyone pretty much every day I was there, except for the one night that I got invited to a dinner and I knew everyone at the table. I was like, yes, where have you all been hiding? But it was a really great conference. I went to some really good classes. I brought back some good information, a little bit of internal processes for payroll, timesheet processing. Hopefully we can implement that. I'm also working on some other benefits for city staff right now, things like AFLAC options for employees to participate in. We're also rolling out EAP, which is Employee Assistance Program. So our medical dental vision plan didn't have an EAP portion to it, which is very necessary, critical, especially since COVID. And we're really excited to be able to pull this together and get this out to our staff, hopefully within the next month for their payroll as well. And on a final note, the biggest, happiest news I have to report is that the ARPA funds that were being considered for clawback, it was rescinded in the debt ceiling package that was passed by the legislature. So we're not in fear of losing our funding. I did reach out to our state contact and he said, I don't think that they were ever going to try to grab our money. What they were looking to grab was like funding that they were trying to provide for COVID recovery to other countries, specifically China was a big one. So we are good to go. What I am going to do over the next couple months is I also reached out and asked him for any examples of cities. So I'm going to put together just a small presentation for you to give you some examples of what has been done as far as parks for other communities. And he did have a couple that he's pretty certain were done right here in Washington. So I just need to get that info from him and then I'll bring that back to you. I did mention the auditors, they're on site, we're already underway. I've got lots of requests that I'm fulfilling already. And then in my spare time, I will be doing ClearGov with our budget stuff that's been on hold because I haven't had time as I've done the annual report process and now the audit process. But I do want to get that actually live this year before the year is over. It will be retroactive with our current existing budget, but I want to get it live.
Okay, just a few brief updates.
Okay.
Staffing update. Just want to welcome Jared Johnson to the team. He's our new weekend parks laborer and in Parks Division. Jared worked the weekends and later in the shift be more support for downtown. We gained an employee, however, Derek Gildersleeve is moving to Spokane, so we will be losing a very key member of the team. So we'll be advertising his replacement shortly. Neighborhood Playground Committee email forthcoming. You'll see that Councilmember Waters, Councilmember Strand from John Shantz. Get that going. And then last but not least, just let me know if there are any questions on the May Public Works report and strategic plan progress report. There are. That's it.
Tom, do you know when Link Transit is going to start construction on the roundabout? Have they finalized anything with regard to start date?
So good question. The latest information I have is that they're still in washed out review and they're aiming for advertisement later this month for July, so. it's gonna be
Oh, I
about-
thought they were already gonna be advertising. Okay.
No,
That's late, isn't that late? Isn't that pretty late in the year?
It's getting late.
It is supposed to start the 1st of July, initially.
Yeah, I think it's being held up by Watchdog, right?
It's notorious, but they were supposed to be on a fast track, but that's,
Yeah,
and maybe they still are for Washtenaw, but.
maybe, well, we added our transmission main section there, but that didn't delay anything.
We've decided not to pave Glacier until next year at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Yeah.
wait, it's we. I thought the
Yeah.
parking commission. I thought we were waiting for a study. I thought we were waiting for a study.
No, we're supposed to go out to ad on June 5th and Gray Osborne missed that deadline.
Yeah, this, and also too, the restroom one's gonna be part of that big package, so because that got pushed, we just decided, no, we're gonna consolidate everything and have one big package. We're still going to add later this year, even this summer, but it's gonna take months to procure materials, so they're not gonna start construction till next spring.
So we're gonna have to give another variance because it's supposed to be paid by city workers.
That I'll defer to Muath on, I don't know the exact.
Don't we have a temporary parking permit?
Well, 2 years is,
We do, but they sunset.
Okay.
They're supposed to be temporary.
yeah,
Shame on us.
yeah.
Hey, way to go, guys. We set a precedent.
Okay.
Lower down.
And we really don't want it to be offline for all of the winter. So.
Right, that's,
Make your choices.
Yeah.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Zeke, seconded by Jason, all in favor, let me see your hands, yay. Y'all get to go.
Thanks, everybody.
You.
And June 13th was their target